All right, call to order for Berlin Finance Committee. Open session public meetings are subject to being videotaped. Your image and voice may be recorded. All right, where do we want to get started first? Since you have last night's budget up there first.
I was going to say, I have some ideas. I didn't know if we wanted to do a couple little items first to get them out of the way.
Sure.
As like a warm-up here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Make sure our brains are all functioning. Hold on just a minute. No, document not saved. Well, don't yell at me, please. Okay. So, let me bring up the budget, please. Open. Okay. So, expenditures. What I thought we would do, so the select board did vote on most of those items in the budget that you were waiting for them to vote on. So I thought if you'd like, Scott, we could start by just taking a couple of those low-hanging fruit items off the, I'm going to have to make this smaller. Hold on. If I do 75, does that work? I can go over a little bit too.
You got it in there now.
All right, perfect. So we are really close. As you can see, everything that's filled in, so there's, I'm pointing again, I can't point, I have to use the mouse. There's the select board column for the dollar amount they voted on and the date that they voted. And then there's the FinCom dollar amount column and the date that it was voted. So as we go down, there's some holes that I've highlighted.
Sorry, Kristen, is this in the Google Docs yet, or is this too new?
This is, well, the version 7 is in the Google Docs.
Yeah, we're at.
And I'm on 8. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
fine. That's all right.
You know, I worked out up till this afternoon, so I didn't put it in there. I can get it up.
No, it's no problem. I just want to know where to look. I'll look up there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your flexibility.
No problem.
So good news on treasurer collector expenses. We can actually take $1,000 out of there. The reason we had added that extra 5,500. I need like a pointer. The extra $5,500 that you see in the supplemental column was for the deputy collector fees, if you remember. Mm-hmm. We had $6,500 in there originally. We ran the numbers for the first 7 months of 23, and we're comfortable going with 55 instead of 65. So that's just a revote to reduce that by $1,000.
I make a motion that we reduce line item 30, treasurer,
wait a minute, 23.
23,
Thank you.
treasurer collector expenses by $1,000 for the new amount to be $50,756.
Excellent.
All right, I have a second.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on it? All right, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julie, aye.
Okay.
And
Now,
that was line item 23?
line item
Yeah.
23, treasurer collector expenses. Now, I had to play around with this a little bit. So, I think I talked a little bit about this in the email that I sent out about revenue adjustments, because we had ended up taking more out of local receipts and less out of property tax. So there was more than a 2.5% jump, and we scaled it back to that 2.5% because that's what the norm is. So we had a few $1,000s we had to adjust in some places to do that. One of them was in the legal expense line item. That I had originally asked for 75. You had recommended 80. I would recommend if we take it back to 75, because I'm leaving the reserve fund at your requested $110,000 on the off chance that we should need it. I don't think we will. I have been speaking with a potential new firm that is more cost effective. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
So it's another reduction.
Well, wait a second here. We already had it at 75. I mean, this is looking at what you had sent out. This is version 7. I don't remember ever being at 80. That's why I'm.
So both the select board and the FinCom had voted it at 80, and I apologize, some of the formulas are tied together to change at the same time, so that if one gets updated, the other one does. So it may be when I put it back to 75 that it went back
Okay.
to 75 on there. That could possibly be my fault.
So, I make a motion on line item 24, legal expenses, that we accept the budget at $75,000, which is a $5,000 decrease than original.
Or it was the original town
Yeah.
administrator recommendation.
Town administration recommendation, Julie, sorry. So it's line item 23,
24.
24.
oh, excuse me, 24 legal expenses.
Yes.
At $75,000 as town administrator suggests, recommends.
Okay,
I will second it, although it pains me to take money away from the lawyers, but I will second it.
If I could divert the 5,000 to the lawyers of the world, I would, Mary.
Okay. Sorry.
You're probably the only person that would want to direct it towards the lawyers.
Somebody's got to defend them.
All right. Any further discussion on this?
Good thought.
All right. Roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
All right, we're now down on line 36, Conservation Commission. Unfortunately, given the increase in the school budget this year, this is just one of those supplemental funding requests that I'm afraid we really just can't afford to fund. I did reach out to Carolyn, and I suggested that perhaps we discuss wetlands, open space. Am I calling it the right thing? Thank you. You have to forgive me. I'm going on like 45 hours already this week. So I wanted to talk to her about how perhaps we could take some funding out of there that might enable her to increase the hours, so she could have 8 regular hours and perhaps a couple other hours from those other funding sources that are outside of the general fund budget. So I haven't heard back from her yet. Hopefully we'll be able to sit down and have a discussion about that. I have to say that is probably, should there be any other adjustments that come in from Assabet, I don't really see much at this point. I don't see the schools really adjusting, but should anything change, that would be the first item I would recommend putting in. But the select board did vote not to fund that supplemental funding request on Monday night.
Do we have to vote not to fund it because it's in the budget?
You don't have to vote not to fund it. You have to vote on whether you're going to fund the $12,081 or whether you're going to also fund the 6,220, which would be a different number.
So the 6,220 is her current, is the current?
No, it's the
I'm sorry.
12,000.
The 1281 is the regular request, and then
Uh-huh.
she asked for an additional $6,220.
Okay, and the select board voted on the original 12,081.
Correct.
I make a motion for line item 36 to remain at the original 12,081 as voted by the select board and recommended by the town administrator.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay. Roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
And it is something that I do see the need for, and it's unfortunately one of those items that I wish we could fund, and there are places that we just can't do it. And I hope that we can perhaps do it next year or work out a different way to do it. All right, so that actually brings us to police wages. Their supplemental request of $41,666, which was for half of a year of a full-time daytime police officer and $8,500 for a sergeant promotion to be a supervisor on the night shift. June over here gets all the credit. We sat down and really talked about this and what could we do, because obviously that $41,000 is a large increase. It's not when you look at the fact that the police budget is $1.2 million, but that is a very large chunk of change. Public safety mitigation funding is exactly for this type of thing, because where are our calls coming in? River Bridge and
right.
shoplifting at Highland Commons. So I think it makes perfect sense to take that out of the mitigation funding, I did present this back to the select board. They were interested in funding the half-time, daytime police officer out of that. They still did not want to fund the sergeant. So I did recommend that I'm concerned not funding the sergeant is a liability. It is $8,500. Obviously up to the FinCom how they want to proceed with that.
Okay, so the 4,100 right now is just the new police officer,
The 41,000 includes the new police officer for half a year,
right?
and the 8,500 for the full year sergeant.
8,500 is a full year for the sergeant.
It's hard to see what they voted on because.
Oh, I'm sorry. They voted on 914,916.
Oh, and the original was 922,9.
My recommendation was 922,916.
Okay, that's taking out the sergeant position.
Correct.
And now looking at the funding from the, is this all coming from Highland Commons? The money in that mitigation?
It's coming from public
Or we
safety
getting-
mitigation is Riverbridge.
Riverbridge also.
They give $100,000 a year for 5 years. Highland Commons is a percentage based on the CPI index rate calculation that happens, and that's in perpetuity,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
So that's why I also feel I would not normally advocate for funding staffing positions out of anything that was a one-time funding
Right.
source, but the fact that we have an in perpetuity source of mitigation funding makes this a little bit different.
Is that Highland, or which one is that?
Highland.
Highland.
It is
Highland
Highland.
Commons.
What are we getting right now from them? I mean, what's the
This year's bill is going to be approximately $677,000.
really?
And how much of that have we spent already?
None. We're only spending what's actually in.
So that $8,000 is coming out of a 600 and some odd change that will be there next year.
Yes.
Right.
All right, I'm going to go on a limb. I am recommending we vote on line. Oh, you're moving it on me.
I'm sorry.
Line item 47, as the town administrator has recommended, 922,916, all coming from.
Can you repeat that number, please?
Yes, I can. I'll do the whole thing. Line item 47, it's wages full-time, an increase of 41,666, which
That part comes from mitigation.
mitigation money, for
And
a
that's
total
41.
41,666, for a total of 922,916, as recommended by the town administrator.
And can I have that number again, please? Sorry.
I'm sorry,
The
say.
nine.
Line item 47.
Yeah, no,
It's 922,916.
Oh, I'm sorry.
922
916.
916.
And for our viewing audience, the public safety mitigation funding can only be used for public safety purposes. But what it does is it takes it out of the operating budget, so the taxpayers actually aren't paying for those funds. So it's a good source of revenue for increased public safety needs to offset increased public safety costs that come from those developments.
And I agree, if it's in perpetuity, we're going to keep getting that fund over and over and over again, so it's not like it's a capital or it's going to go away and then we have to worry about.
Well, would have concern. I know a lot of what we've been taking out of that fund in the past year. Well, we've been looking at the things from funding, I think, some of the more like capital type of items. Do we see any concerns? Because it's public safety, it's not just police, it's fire. And I know they're pushing for the fire equipment coming up. Do we see this as being any issue with that?
I don't, only because of the large amount from Highland Commons and the fact that we currently have $853,000 in the fund, and we'll be getting another $600 next year. So that fund next year in and of itself would, I mean, not that we want to wipe the whole fund out, because I think we want to look at a 2-year short-term kind of borrowing situation perhaps for the fire truck, but there is coverage there. Also with our free cash being at $3 million to offset capital. We just met with capital. We have a rather robust capital plan that we'll be putting forward. I would feel comfortable taking that out of the public safety mitigation.
And I believe we're already using 200 and some change to offset 2 police officers, I think.
Correct, so that's
Right.
annually in the budget.
Right, the
so-
2 lowest salaried
Mhm.
officers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds right.
so that's, oops, let's go this way. Yeah, I need to see my notes, but that's fine, you can see.
So now going forward, it will be, because obviously the number
It
looks
would
small
have to
there
be
because it's only a half a year in the first year, but going forward, it will be 3 police officers. I'm assuming, we will assume it's going to be the 3 lowest salaried officers going forward.
Right, so what you're looking at, well, the sergeant
Well,
is,
other
that's
than
a
the-
little bit different, but yeah,
yeah,
you're bringing on a brand-new
right.
officer, so they'll likely either have to go to the academy, or if we get really lucky, they'll be fresh out of the academy. They would start according to the union contract at whatever the step 1 is on the pay scale. So just so you can see, we've taken 210, actually in 22 we took 239,500. I'm not exactly sure why that went up or down, but in 23 we took 210. I did do an adjustment here of basically the 2.5% cost of living plus the step increase that factors in for the 2 officers that are already in that money. And then I added in the 41,666.
It probably dropped because I know we've had significant turnover at the police.
It
Right, and
very
it's always
well,
been targeting the 2 lowest, and now we've truly got at the bottom of the scale right now, or will have when they're actually full staff.
right. The hard part is we have to, estimate it in the budget, and so the closest I can kind of come to at this time would be that 262, 297 that would go in
Okay.
if we do as you were proposing
Mhm.
instead of the 210.
Did we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. I'll second Janet's motion.
All right. Any
Um,
more discussion?
And just to be clear, what I'm seconding is the sergeant plus the
Correct.
night duty
For
guy,
the
yeah.
41, I just feel it's low, it's really low, and it's coming out of mitigation, which is clearly what it was used for. And we have such a large amount.
Hey, Janet, yeah, and what did Kristen's mom tell us, right?
Yes.
Anything good happens after what?
Midnight.
Midnight.
That's okay. Last night at the school committee, I said the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that showed up in an email today. So maybe nothing good happens after midnight will show up in an email
Mike
tomorrow.
used that expression once, and somebody called the phone and went, "Ee, ee," and that's all they said.
Perfect.
Right. And one of the points that's been made too is that the mostly inexperienced officers are on the 3rd shift, and next also goes unsupervised,
Right.
which
And-
is totally opposite of what any other business situation would ever have. And so, it does make sense.
Got a little common sense here in FinCom tonight.
Right. Well, and one thing too to point out, what you're doing is you're offsetting some of that 8,500 by the fact that when they call an officer in the middle, or a supervisor in the middle of the night, they are putting in for their time. that
They
they're
are putting in their
spending.
time. I know you said that by contract they can.
By
but
contract, they
we've-
can put in for 4 hours.
Right.
Whether they use it or not, my understanding is they're
Yeah.
not really putting
Yeah.
in for the 4 hours. But they do have a right to be paid for the
Right.
time that they work. And according to the union contract, if they get a 5-minute phone call, they could be putting in for 4 hours. They're not trying to, extort the town on any means, but they're basically saying, we're getting a call in the middle of the night because there's no supervisor on this shift. Somebody needs to be covering this.
Right, and now we have a predictable number that if anybody does start charging, who knows what that could turn into.
It's a little bit of my concern as well, in addition to just the liability piece that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other discussion?
No,
Okay, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julia.
Yes, she is. That's the 8th. Today's not the
By
6th.
the way, Jeremy, as of December, how are we doing with River Bridge mitigation? Is it paid?
As of right now, they're all paid up as far as the 100,000.
Mitigation.
100,000, that's all I was asking about, was
Okay.
the public safety mitigation, that.
Yep.
that commitment.
Yep.
All right.
The next one won't be
Trucking
now
along.
due until this November.
Yeah.
The next one's pretty easy. We just hadn't voted on the transfer station because there were so many
Oh, yeah.
changes going on over there.
Yep.
The wages is based on a formula of how many Saturdays fall in the year. It's a little bit higher next year. That's why it's above 2.5%. But the expenses offset it a bit because their expenses only come in at a 2.3% increase. So the select board did vote to approve that Monday night.
Okay. I make a motion to vote on lines 73 and 74, transfer station wages 73, transfer station expenses 74, wages 44509, expenses 154390 as voted on as positive by select board and recommended by the town administrator. Y'all are gonna mix me next year.
I will
Yeah,
second
now
that.
that you've got this down.
I got it down.
Yeah.
You're not
All right, any other discussion?
She can come back just for budget time.
All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
All right. So in order to make things work, I did have to put the social services portion of the budget back into ARPA for another year. It has been budgeted for both FY24 and FY25 out of ARPA. So there's no change in service, no disruption in service. I really wanted to get it in this year. I can't make it work. And I don't want to take any more funding away from the schools or from anybody else because we've already had such a large increase that we're already not able to fund on that side. So because we have the ARPA funding, hopefully we can get it in 25, if not definitely in 26. I did speak with Victoria about it.
What have we got left in ARPA funding is my question. And when is the last time we can spend that? 26?
So we have to have everything obligated or allocated by the end of calendar year 24 and expended by the end of calendar year 26.
Okay. So how much actually did we get and how much have we spent out of it?
If you give me a moment, I can give you a
Just curious.
spreadsheet.
We got just under $1 million.
Yeah.
I just can't remember the figures like you. Sorry.
Well, I used to remember the generic number.
What's the most recent one we did? 230?
If you made adjustments to it, you can do it by date.
Oh, it's just taking a while to open for some reason. I clicked on it. Did I not?
Do you
Oh, it opened in the background. I didn't realize it. So this is what's been allocated for ARPA so far. You can see the list of projects here, 1 through 9. The good news is project 9, which was the ambulance overage, is on the town meeting warrant to come out of ambulance receipts, not out of ARPA. So that would put another 114.
So we have to
back.
add that column. Oh, you have it added.
I do.
Okay.
So, and I have my little note down there too. I was like hoping I got those numbers right in my head. So we received 968,458 in ARPA funds. We've committed to spend 407,005. So we have 561,453 plus the 114. So there's still a lot of funding that hasn't been obligated yet.
Is that committed funds including the FY24 social service?
It is. So that's project number 2. So social services, you can see it has 20 hours a week over here.
And it's
I'm sorry, 20.5 hours a week for, excuse me, I'm sorry, it was 22, 23, and 24. So we do need to put it in 25.
yeah,
I got my years off.
36 out of that, but we're also getting 100,000 back, so it's probably about 75. So okay,
Correct.
all right, I'm good now. Sorry.
No problem.
Is the road engineering just on regarding the bridge, or is it other?
Not specifically. It's basically funding so we can have shovel-ready projects and apply for grants. So
Right.
we're meeting with, actually Friday, meeting with an engineering firm, Fred and I, to talk about a couple of the projects he has so that we can put them out to see if we can get grant funding.
But one of them is a bridge on Salt Street, right?
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, I've watched how often they have to keep patching that hole.
Yeah, that one's a little bit of a disaster.
You use that a lot more than I do, Scott.
I use it all the
A little
time.
more concerned.
I do too, and just hope that I don't see it open up, that's all.
I know exactly. Sometimes I wonder if I should tell my daughter not to drive there.
It's not gonna, they would have closed it, the state inspected it.
Before you
Oh.
make your motion,
Oh.
sorry, one more change. There was an additional funding request for $300 on the expense line. I don't know if we talked about this last time. Victoria was advised by town council to get a HIPAA compliant program software for her counseling notes.
Yep.
That's like encrypted and all that good stuff. So that we did a lot of pricing, and she was able to get one for $300 a year.
Does that include her email?
I'm not sure. I
It
can
needs to look into that.
Okay, sure.
I just learned that this year for my own self. Okay, so, Council on Aging, Social Services, line items 81, which is full-time wages, 82, which is part-time wages, and 83, which is expenses. Got it, Julie?
Yeah. So you want these numbers here then? Can you see them, or I just make them?
That's
hard to
okay,
see?
it's fine. I make a motion for line item 81 for 34,383 full-time wages. Line item 82, part-time wages of 25,284. And line 83, expenses 17,341. As approved in the affirmative by Select Board and recommended by Town Administrator.
I think you might have said 25,284 instead of 248.
Oh, maybe I'm dyslexic.
I am too,
25,
so I understand.
248. Sorry.
I just want to correct for the record.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll second the motion as corrected.
Okay, any more discussion on this? Okay, roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julia.
Sorry, I spaced.
Oh, did I have to say it was
No.
from ARPA funds?
No, none of that.
No,
None
none
of that
of
is
that's
from
from
ARPA
ARPA.
funds.
No.
That's the budget.
Oh.
Okay, phew. Okay.
What's today? 3.
Thought I made a
No,
really
it's not
blunder.
separate.
Okay.
I'm still thinking it's Monday. Get to the right day here. Okay, there we go. All right, and I believe that's, recreation. So it's still in blue because I think we were kind of pending more information, and I'm not sure where we exactly left it off with Julie. But I know we got the information on the 21% increase and why she needed to go from 14,410 to 17,550. Those are the fixed costs associated with Goose Patrol, which doesn't sound as fun as Snow Patrol.
Septic.
And the reason we didn't is landscaping. She has to come back with 3 quotes for landscaping. So that is on hold for now, but I did add that $1,500
money?
programming request that she asked for seed money for programming camps in the summer.
Yeah.
Although the select board asked, I forgot to mention this to you, someone put you on the spot, if they had $1,500 in their revolving account that they could use instead. You don't have to get it now.
Well, I
just for
know
later.
you told us before that it was
I
9,000.
was gonna say there was some in it already.
So they do have it in the revolving, which is one of the things I thought of too. I mean, when they came back, even before they even came back with it, I suggested, like, we have your revolving fund.
I
We're
don't
not
think
looking
she
at-
knew
at
The
that.
selectmen said the same thing.
For-
I don't
so
think they know that.
She does know about
She does know.
But
For
I don't
some
think
reason,
she
they
realized-
She
resist
does
using
know,
it.
and that's supposed to be for the grounds because they actually pay rent when they rent it out. So she did know because she has used the money.
But how is it written in the bylaw? Can it be used for programming?
All the money in rec is supposed to be
Yeah.
used in
It's
programming.
for
There
rec.
isn't supposed to be 1 penny spent
I knew
on
this was coming.
Goose Patrol, septic systems, and anything else.
Just come
I've been
out with
saying
it,
this
Janet.
for
Nobody
6
likes the gas,
years.
Janet.
Just come out with it. She doesn't want any
See,
poop.
grounds
No.
improvements because they're renting it out. That was
Maybe
the
that's where
reason
the landscaping overage is going to have to come out of too.
Well, that's okay.
So so that's hold for now
Hold
because
for
we're
now.
still getting more info. And that brings us down to
I like the yellow.
the
Oh, we have to talk
schools.
about this though.
Yes.
Okay.
So Assabet.
Yeah, let's start with Assabet first.
Assabet went lower. Yay. So their assessment went down it was 26.4% because it's based on a per pupil enrollment number, and we had it was either 7
7
or 9 more
students.
pupils. Thank you. 7
Bringing us to
more
44.
pupils. I have so many numbers floating in my head. Added for FY24. They basically, when they came before us, they didn't have the governor's budget. So they gave us a high estimate. Now that they have the governor's budget numbers, they sent out a revised assessment, which for FY24 is going to be 705,398. So I don't know why I left that in blue. That's actually something you can vote on this evening should you feel so inclined.
Again, 709,3.
705,398. That is an increase of 123,978 over FY23.
Do we have, I haven't unfortunately paid attention to their meetings, and of course not that it would be from their meetings. Do we know what kind of feedback they've gotten from the other towns on this? Because obviously this is, I mean, they're taking more and more kids that are part of the
Right.
7 towns, and then losing the revenue from the out-of-district kids. I mean, ours, the whole dollar amounts is small compared to like Marlboro, Hudson.
It is. Yes, thank you for the reminder.
And I'm curious to see if they've been getting any pushback themselves on it. I know they require 5 towns to approve their budget.
So they gave some really good information in their budget presentation about
always
that. That's staffing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Enrollments.
I
Here
went
we
through
go.
this a little earlier. This is great.
Yeah.
So up, as Scott mentioned, up 7 for Berlin.
Yeah.
There are out of district. So the out of districts are the Boylston, Clinton, Shrewsbury, and other.
Yeah, and that's plummeting, as you can see, is
Because enrollment from
yes, from the other
member
the member
districts is-
towns are
Right.
absorbing, taking up the rest, leaving.
This is the dynamic they explained to us last year.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's going to continue for the
Yes.
next few years. I mean, you can just
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
numbers as they shift off the chart. I mean, grade 9 has, a total of 10 kids, while you can see how there'll probably be 10 kids or so, and as things shift across.
Scott, remind me, what's in district? Berlin, Hudson, Marlboro.
The first 7, so Berlin, Hudson, Marlboro, Maynard,
First 7.
Northborough, Southborough, Westborough.
Right. Where the budget, if you look in the budget line, where it stops,
Thank you. Okay, I see.
because
Yep,
that's
yep.
a separate, in their budget, they budget separately for
Right.
out-of-district tuition. So
Right.
those are the non-member towns.
Yeah, the 3 towns that are really getting bit by it is, the member towns taking so many is Boylston, Clinton, and Shrewsbury.
Right.
I know there was, when we,
Do you know if they get priority though over other towns, or are they in the
no,
same?
It's all
there's no
lottery.
pri-
So it's
yeah,
all
that's all
lottery.
lottery.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did have some questions, and I think I shared them with the
Yeah.
FinCom. The superintendent has offered to meet with me and or us. The thing that was confusing to me, and I'll pull up this little comparison that I did. The budget changed a lot from what was actually recommended in 23. This is Assabet. And this is my spreadsheet, just for full disclosure. The budget changed fairly significantly from the FY23 preliminary budget, which is what our assessment is based on, to the actual FY23 budget. So you can
So
see.
this was you, Kristen, that sent that particular one out.
That
I
was
was
me.
looking at it earlier.
As me, yes.
Okay.
I wanted to
Okay.
kind of look year over year because I noticed the drop,
Yep.
and then it goes back up. But kind of the most interesting thing to me was you had a drop of about 3.5 million. They actually made that up in out of district tuition. So that ended up making a lot more sense. What was a little bit confusing to me still is the fact that their FY24 budget is lower than their FY23 budget by about $47,000. And yet assessments obviously went up for us because we had people, but it appeared assessments also went up for other communities that did not see an increase in students. So it could be, again, in full disclosure, I'm new to regional schools. It could be my lack of, understanding of it, but it just kind of was a curious point for me going, well, it's actually going down. The other thing is, I know the superintendent talked about they're very close to their per pupil minimum spending amount. So I was kind of curious why the overall budget dropped down so much. And I have a feeling they may be adding out of district tuition perhaps into this again, and maybe they're not going to drop it like last year, they're going to increase it, but I think there's some nuances to it that it was too complicated to explain over email.
Yep.
Yes, I mean there was, because when they came in the first time, that was one of the things that he discussed about, because of that whole minimum funding or minimum per pupil requirements by the state. That's why he had, at that time, didn't have the out-of-district money in there at all, which was first time we've ever seen that scenario. And if you actually printed out or scrolled through the new slides that came, there is a whole slide showing now the money in for out-of-district. It's near the end, it's maybe a third to the last or so. This slide was completely new. This is new. This was not there when they presented to us the first time, right here, because they had, and he even pointed out they had zero out-of-district tuition in that part of the budget because it was, I don't understand myself of the formulas and the rules of all this stuff, because that was messing up, or at least they understood it being messing up the minimum contributions.
Right, and to me, your budget should show all revenues, because then it looks to me like your budget's going down.
Yes, exactly. And then, of course, you're bringing in this money. Where are you spending it? I mean, you can't go, it's like, well, there's some, and you could, because who knows what the state can become some fancy-ass formulas that suddenly go, oh, but there is no way for you to spend it. I mean, this is only from, government can produce those type of rules.
Absolutely. Municipal finance. It's a whole ball of wax.
What confused me about this slide when I looked at it was, why did their insurance go down $250,000?
It didn't.
They're offsetting it with out-of-district tuition. They're offsetting it with $500,000.
There's skyrocketing.
That's what the OOD means. I got it.
Yes.
Because I'm like, we're at 10.5%, and how did they? I want their.
That's what and again.
Bring up their insurance number. You'll see it.
They just shifted how they funded it.
Yeah, I get it. Yep.
But I said, is that a typo initially when I looked at it, because they didn't have that out-of-district tuition slide, so I was missing a piece of the puzzle. So I think a lot of these questions have been answered with the updated presentation.
Yes.
But I had shared that with you, so I wanted to complete the...
So I'm also wondering if they got more circuit breaker money this year, because he spoke about how they had a larger increase of, so that might also be part of it.
Assabet is relying on the published budget numbers.
Yeah, I know.
Because this is a budget, it's a projection, right?
I know.
They're relying on it.
So that might have also helped them out a little bit.
And it's huge what the governor did.
Because they said that that's...
reimbursement, transportation...
and they got more money for transportation as well, he said.
Where's their circuit breaker in here? Am I, it's really small, so it might...
I don't see it either.
Blind.
I don't know if he called it out by that name. Although
Sorry.
It's revenue. Is it a revenue? What's E&D stand for?
That's their excess.
Okay, sorry.
So that's what they have to give back to the community. So they gave back 800,000 last year.
So I don't see their circuit breaker. I don't know where they put it.
Yeah, I see the minimum local. Maybe it's wrapped into their
see,
chapter 70.
They got an extra what? That's
almost
where,
2.5
million. So yeah.
It's I didn't know if they had combined it, but you're right.
Circuit breaker
That would be
is
it.
different.
It should be a separate line item.
It should. Hold on, let me go back to, maybe it's on a separate slide. I think some of the challenge too for us is our revenues fall so nicely into one page and one sheet. It doesn't work that way for the schools, and it's a little bit tough sometimes. That's capital.
I understand it doesn't fit in the sheet. I mean, it's one of those things. Expose them into the same sheets consecutively instead of something on page 5, another on page 17. I mean, that's the...
Yeah.
That's where you're just jumping around.
So are we voting on this, or do you want to speak to the superintendent before we vote
Well,
on it?
I guess that's my question to you. So most of my questions have been answered in this updated presentation that Ernie sent over after I had made my spreadsheet. But I didn't know if you all still had some questions, if you would like to see them come back in, if you want me to meet with them, kind of what is your pleasure?
Well, we do have, bring up, I know we have an open date next week, not that we want to keep, because originally we're reading this week because it was me, I was supposed to be traveling. I won't be traveling next week. People are coming to me instead of me going to them.
I don't know if I need to
So-
hear them again. It's a lower amount. Do we want to just say, hey, is this a typo, or is
Well-
this, are we gonna have some unexpected? That's my only
Well,
question.
Yeah, and I think the out-of-district tuition slide kind of ties it together.
Okay.
For me on that one.
Well, yeah, when you
I
explain.
think
do
our
have a few
question
other
is the circuit
questions.
breaker, is we could get
Yeah.
ask the circuit breaker number.
Yep, I can do that. And circuit breaker numbers. Because I imagine, much like what BBRSD is dealing with, they must be dealing with it on the Assabet side too. And one of the things, that 14%, I don't know if they called it an inflationary increase that OSD put out, whatever you want to call it, that basically there's an increase in cost of 14%, but there wasn't a corresponding increase in 14% of funding to offset that. Mm-hmm. So not only do you have an increased cost just of more students coming in or students with higher needs, but there's that inflationary rate that isn't being fully reimbursed at either. So I think that would be good information to have. All right. So we can hold on that, and I can get a little more info, or we can have him back. He said he'd be welcome, more than happy to come back if you would like.
Well, like I say, we do have the open slot next Wednesday. Does anybody have a conflict next Wednesday? We want to do that? We're running out of Wednesdays anyways to finish things up, but we do have that.
You're actually,
opportunity.
yeah, and you're basically finished now that we went through everything but recreation and the schools.
One of those is going to be an easy
Are
one.
we going to have to talk about this again, this poop and this stuff again?
No, we're
Will
not.
not speak of
Just to-
Canadian geese
Just to
again.
remind myself, because I was looking at that 14%, which I think relates to the state approval of the out-of-district tuition. So here's the budget memo out of the state from February 23rd. So the budget proposes full funding for charter school reimbursements, $243 million. Also fully funds special education circuit breaker at $503 million, a $63 million, 14% increase over fiscal year 23. That reflects full phase in of out-of-district transportation cut, right, blah, blah. So
So they're saying they're
and
funding
the
it.
proposal also quadruples the amount of funding available for extraordinary relief or payments that defray certain district costs in the year they are incurred. Unlike most of this program, which reimburses districts a year in arrears. And finally, it includes a $10 million reserve for relief to districts whose municipalities have been disproportionately impacted by increases in target local contributions in recent years.
Oh, so maybe they got more money.
So, the proposal is to put a lot more money in there. Now, of course, you've got to get into those formulas that we were looking at Monday night. But,
Right.
but still, and I think Assabet has been
Has to be
relying
in
on
the
the
mix.
information that came out here. Certainly,
Yeah.
the Chapter 70 numbers. Although
Okay.
the Berlin-Boylston also took the Chapter 70 numbers right out of what the governor published on February 23rd.
Okay.
Same numbers. And they didn't change on March 1. The governor's numbers were the same.
They were the same, yes,
Yeah.
which was really
Yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay. No, I
but-
missed that. That's very helpful, actually, because I had thought the 14% increase wasn't covered.
Right. It was
That they were asking for it to be amended in the future House and Senate budgets to cover the 14. So I misread that.
It's in their proposal to
Perfect.
increase that special education circuit breaker money by 63 million or 14%,
Excellent.
which matches what they allowed the out-of-district
Right.
schools to
Yeah,
do with their
that's
tuition.
Well, you know, and just as an aside, one thing that came up, I attended the school committee meeting last night, as did Scott. It's not just, you know, the number of students that are needing special education, but there's unique and different issues around special education that have come up as a result of COVID, which Janet's smiling because she knows all too well. So I think just for the viewers, this is not an issue of anyone questioning whether these services are needed or legitimate. It's how do we fund them? Because
Exactly.
they're there and they need to be funded.
It's not unique to this school district either.
Oh,
It's across
absolutely
the
not.
state. I mean,
Right.
I meet twice a week with the nurses from all over the state, and we're all struggling with this.
Mental health is a huge issue right now, especially too.
There's
So
no
should-
doubt about it. We've been hearing about it for 2 years. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And,
looking
you know,
forward-
it was-
and when there was, when we had COVID sort of federal money, then you could supplement that, but this is not something you can rely on a longer
Yeah,
term.
I mean, a lot of places have hired extra counselors and extra
Right.
nurses, and now they can't build that back into their salary budget, and there's no more money, so now they're cutting these people.
Right, they used ESSER money to do that because
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was really
Yeah, and that's-
encouraged
yeah,
as part of
yeah,
it.
Yeah,
and
and
that-
that's
and that's
very much
phasing out.
encouraged. Yep,
Yep.
yep.
The other thing this memo says, which I found encouraging, was that the Chapter 70 school aid was at 6.585 billion, and that is 586 million increase over fiscal '23, a 9.8% increase in the Chapter 70 monies, which I think we see in our local numbers, representing the largest nominal increase in the history of the program, and the largest percentage increase in more than 2 decades. So, that's
Yeah. The mental health was actually even starting before COVID. We were seeing a rise in this, and then when COVID hit, kids went home. So the kids that wanted to be home were now home. You know, because you've got that, school refusal group that just wants to be home. Now they're home. And now trying to get them back into school is twice as hard.
I'm hearing this from people.
It's just so sad.
Other states.
Yeah. It's nationwide.
So I
It's
think we
worldwide.
need to take away their Chromebooks.
Well, there's a whole thing about that if you can get them to give it up for
Oh my gosh.
social media. You know what? There's a study right now that says that, and they have kids buying in, and these kids that have gone without it actually realize
They don't need it.
they don't need it, and they don't want it back after they've done it. But it's that initial buy-in that you've got to get them to.
Right. Well,
It's a
but
great
the
study.
fact too that if everybody else is using that to communicate, you're isolated and on the side if you're not using it. It's because
True.
So that's
Yeah.
the hard part too. You don't
Right.
want to be the,
Right.
because someone's sitting next to you and they're all texting each other. That was what my mom is a dental assistant, and she said one girl was 16 and didn't have a phone, and she asked her, how does that influence or affect your life? And she said, I'll be in a room full of kids, they're all texting each other like, hey, can you meet at the mall at 3:00 or whatever, and she's totally out of the loop as to what's going on because she doesn't have a phone. And they're not even talking anymore. They're talking through the phone. They're not talking to each other, even though they're sitting in the same room. So,
And then it's even worse when you deal with kids that have a group of friends that maybe have an Apple and other ones has an Android phones, and the whole messaging doesn't work in the same way. It's we've seen that with just basketball teams and that stuff, coordinating things that people go, it's like sending out, it's like, no, there's a girl or two that are completely left out. Nobody has a clue that they're completely left out of the loop. They think they're sending
they're
the
in it.
information's
Yeah,
getting to them,
everybody. Right,
and it's not.
exactly.
But going back
We
to
can hold on that.
Assabet, so I guess the other question would be maybe a question to Lynn Ryan
Yeah.
to see if she is seeing what her what feedback they've been receiving from the other towns.
Okay, sure.
Just in case is there anybody that's like say, it's a big jump for you're seeing what's happened in Marlboro, Hudson, and that stuff. Are any of them, because they talked about they were trying to add back positions that they cut during the pandemic. There was, I think, 3 positions in the front slide, and depending on where numbers were, he had said that if the towns are pushing back, they will look to actually. yeah, there's 3 full-time positions. If there's
A
pushback.
librarian and.
Well, librarian elective instructors, what they want to do is additions.
Yeah.
And then there was the 3-time that were grant funded that they're trying to move to the operational budget.
His slide says 2, Scott, am I reading?
Well,
wrong?
2 additions, but 3 of them were the.
No, 2, under staffing changes, 2 FTE grant-funded positions moving back into operations.
Is this the latest one? Did you change it to 2 now?
He had
Okay.
3.
Oh,
He
sorry.
had 3
Okay,
originally.
this is the previous version,
Okay, so they
This
have
is
moved
the-
back, moved
Yeah,
out
well,
one.
they've
They've
got
got a new
out
version.
most
Yeah.
recently, yeah.
All right, so they
Yeah.
removed the
think this is the most
English
recent version.
language development instructor.
Yeah.
So they have pulled, well, that or else they found some grant.
The 3-3.
I
Yeah,
can't imagine.
I mean, well, it's not that they removed it. You don't know for certain if they removed it. What it is the grant that was funding it and ESSER money had dried up.
Has gone,
So
right,
it's possible that they have some other money that they're using to fund it. We don't know. We just know it's not moving into the operation budget. Did they just remove the position? It just disappeared in some way.
Yeah.
At least on the slide, it may not have disappeared from the budget.
Right.
Okay, so they have made that one adjustment, and then there was no question whether or not, I mean, they're in the same position, it's just like, I mean, even with Tohoto BMFs, and this is, it's like the sneaky part of the state. We'll give you some grant money, hire something and that stuff, then you can later on, a year or 2 later, claim it's level services. Well, it came as a temporary thing, right? And that's the difficult part of these. I mean, we deal with this all the time.
Except the need is still there now, because, so that's the hard.
Well, the
that's
need
hard
was there
part, right?
beforehand too, right? I mean, it's like, but it's still, I mean, they'll use all that terminology, but it's still, the fact is that when they funded it, they knew it was temporary funding. And that's the piece that, when they then push it as kind of like, it's got to be completely level, it's not truly that. I understand, I mean, how they're pushing it, but it's still, it's deceptive a little bit. And I like the way that, it's presented here at the Assabet. I mean, and they do talk about it when we get into it with
That's a
Tohoto.
much more
Tohoto.
clear
Yes,
and
it's more
honest
more
expression.
transparent,
Much,
like with
much
the
more
Assabet
transparent.
one.
Yep.
It really gets hidden in the stuff with Tohoto. But it is something that, I understand their descriptions, needs. I'm not saying it's not needed, but it is one of those things that they knew it was temporary, and then they,
I think the slide that you're referring to, that everybody really likes on the Assabet budget, is that proposed expenditure by function slide. And we've talked about it with the district, but we've gotten it kind of, I think, broken up on different slides. But what I think you all like about this is we understand that the schools don't have to line item budget and that things are going to flow between lines. That's statutory. But this really breaks up kind of what it looked like in FY23 and what it's going to look like in FY24 in the big areas: administration, athletics, transportation, insurance, those kind of things. And I think that's where, hopefully we can move. I think we're trying to get there this year. I think there's a lot of, new people, myself included, and hopefully we can get to something more like that with the school, with BBRSD next year. Because I think that
Their
is helpful.
transportation dropped by, no, it didn't increase, sorry.
Don't forget,
Yeah.
this doesn't, this is the piece that throws me. This
Yeah.
doesn't include that out-of-district money
Yeah.
that they may be
Yeah.
supplementing
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
these lines with. So that's the only other piece on this one that's tricky for
right,
me.
where you can see the supplementing is that from the previous time is when you look at
Right.
the medical health. The
I
medical
would-
health showed a $500,000 increase
Increase.
last time, which
Yes.
was, I mean, it was astronomical. And now you see where the line,
Sorry.
it shows
I'm
a small
sorry.
increase, but it's really the 500,000 from out-of-district tuitions that are funding it.
I
Right.
see mental health up there.
It's, or medical health,
Medical,
3,200,
right.
yeah.
It's
the health
pretty much
insurance.
level
It's
funded.
insurance of active employees, the 5,200 line item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is looks like a jump, but it's that it was more heavily funded with out of district tuition in FY23. Now they're trying to fund more of it out of the operating budget in FY24. But the other question I had, which was interesting, I didn't see the separation cost, the $5,150. I that more than doubled And I wasn't sure. I did ask about that because I didn't see that was supplemented and removed. And Mary's giving me that look. I see separation costs. I'm like, we gonna fire some people soon? Like, what's going on with separation? I'm kind of just wondering, like, what the idea is behind doubling separation costs. So I did ask that question because maybe I'm missing something. But
What is separation cost?
basically, if somebody gets terminated, and you have to give them a payout. Is my understanding of separation.
Well,
It's a
could be.
buyout at separation, basically, and
That could
That's
be
what I-
one.
that's
That could be
how I would-
one salary.
It could be a retirement though.
Yeah,
too.
Well, that's-
Yes, it could be.
I think he's
That's what I
got
think-
people
I-
retirement.
didn't he mention something?
Yeah, he
about
did.
this?
He mentioned that.
Yeah.
That
I'm
makes a
pretty sure
lot
he did.
more
Yeah,
sense.
I think
Thank
it's
you.
I think it's a
Yeah.
retirement buyout. It's part of the
Yeah.
union. They get like
Yeah.
X amount, and you have to
Yeah.
notify the school a year in
Okay.
advance
I was gonna say,
if
sometimes
you're
it has
going
to
to
do with
retire because they have to fund for it. So
longevity or something.
yeah, if you have an
I'm
X
pretty
amount of
sure-
teachers, they get like.
Separate.
Yes.
See, to me, separation doesn't imply
you're
letting
retirement.
them
So
go.
that
'Cause I remember him
might
saying
actually
that.
be one or
Okay.
two people. You
Well,
know.
yeah.
I
we do
remember
have-
that, Janet.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, I
I
do
remember
too.
him saying
Yeah.
that, but I was thinking that would be
And I
covered
know
in
of
personnel costs.
I know
not-
of 3 teachers that did retire.
Okay,
So, and that's only 3.
that makes a lot more
Right,
sense.
because I see
then.
when I was talking to Nancy last night on the Tohoto side, when they talk, or even BMS side, when they had the breakdown of the original budgets that were given back in February, and under special education, I mean, one of the things they have is retirement payout for one special education per contractual agreement, which in their case was 15,000.
Okay.
Which is a little interesting. I mean, it happens to be a special education teacher, but they listed it under the special education, like, increase of that stuff, which I would say that should be someplace else.
Yeah,
But
things are in weird
That's like
but
the American flags. We'll leave that for another day.
but
It is.
but that,
Get it
I mean, they have the
wrong,
same
not.
thing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the union contracts follow the same, especially in the teachers, follow the same type of rules, and we
It's
all
all
know
union.
we're all knowing we're in this
Yeah,
baby
that
boomer
makes-
generation that there's a lot of people at that retirement age too.
That makes a lot more sense. I read that and
Yeah.
interpreted it in a totally different way, and I'm
Does
like,
does anybody know was there a new contract with the teachers here in the district?
No.
In
When
Assabet?
there was a new contract in BBRSD when they merged because
Sure.
Didn't she say one more?
it had to level out salaries in BMS
Sure,
were
sure.
higher than salaries in Boylston,
we
but
have a-
Boylston had insurance, so they froze. And
I'm
do you remember
over
all that?
I'm
Yep,
all over that,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
I'm asking about,
24 is
between
the
fiscal 23, 24, did we have a different contract?
25, we believe. Is
Yeah,
the new
I don't think
contract.
so. I think it was
So-
22, 23, 24.
And I'm just, I
So
was
there
just,
shouldn't
really, this
be.
is an information question, because there was the thing flying around Monday night, we're gonna have to lay off, 11.
11 teachers.
And I'm like, well,
We had some.
how the heck have we been funding all of those positions, and all of a sudden, we can't fund it even if we increase 5%? What? So I don't get that, and I'm trying to, that's why I was asking if we'd had a contract change.
No.
That would have really bumped up compensation.
No, I think
We
that was
haven't.
just her saying that that's what they would have to do to be
Right.
able to
It-
fund the cuts.
Yeah,
And
so
it's
I.
largely because of the increase in special education, that the overall increase that we're saying we can't, if we're at 5%, so, actually, let me go back in here.
No,
'cause
it's, you don't need to illustrate, I get it.
Oh, all right.
I'm okay with it.
I was just gonna say, I read
uh,
some numbers if anybody was.
Oh, well, there's
interested.
a lot of things you can do around, you don't need to cut 11
I think that
positions.
could have just been her first reaction.
Well,
Well, I think it's a fear and a shock factor, and
I think so.
I don't react well to that.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, one of it also, they say 11 positions. They don't say if they're all full-time positions. I mean, well, how many full-time equivalent positions? I mean, it could be 11 positions, but it's total of 6 that are full-time equivalent. You have part-time people. That was not articulated.
Yeah, there's a lot of amorphous pieces to that, but
But-
it's very frightening to a parent looking at it.
So it sounds like Assabet, well, actually, I don't know how you want to proceed with Assabet. You want me to do some digging?
Well,
Come back?
if you could maybe just ask the question, I mean, we were looking for the circuit breaker number,
Yep.
how that's in there, or if you want me to do, like I said, an email to Lynn to ask her of, how other towns have received this. 'Cause are they
Oh, yes, yeah.
getting any pushback at all, because it'd be nice to know that if there's other, I mean, first of all, Marlboro, I think, is over half the budget, or to the exact, I mean, they're a big part of it. And
So are you saying, like, if Marlboro says no, and we
They-
say yes, what?
Well, they just need 2/3, so they need 5 yeses of the
Right.
7 towns.
It's
So
different
if
than
5 towns say
two.
yes, and 1 or 2 say no, then that budget, that's what the numbers are. So,
Right,
just
but
like,
what if we say, I guess I'm not understanding, if 2 towns say no, and 3 towns say yes, are those 2 towns then obligated to go with the budget because
Yes.
the other
Yes.
3 overrode? Okay,
Yes.
that's where I needed
right.
clarification.
I mean, that's where it's like, it's the same 2/3 thing, which is, I hated being last night when they talked about the 2/3, because even when some people started repeating the 2/3 number, I don't think they represent the 2/3 number properly, because the 2/3 is how it's written, but there's only 2 towns. So it's unanimous or not, right? Because
Exactly.
it has a, right, because
That's
there's
the wrinkle that confused everybody.
right.
That's why
We only have 2 towns.
Right, and I think there was people that heard people were
Well,
starting to refer to
2/3
2/3.
from each town.
Yeah,
No,
2/3
2/3 of the
of the participating
towns.
towns.
Oh.
Exactly, and that's exactly, I think, how some people took
That's
it, is
how I
like
took
other
it.
votes would be a 2/3 vote to get, it's not that
It's
case.
not.
They need 2/3 towns, but it's a meaningless statement.
The 2/3 though would be a.
In a-
Right, it has to be
Oh,
unanimous when you
yeah,
only
you
have
need
2
Agreement
towns.
from both towns.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So 2/3 if it
All right.
went to a joint meeting.
If we went to a
Yeah.
joint meeting, it's simple majority of those at the meeting, regardless of
Yes,
which.
exactly,
Yeah,
then you go,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So,
Okay.
But if we
I think
ever
that's
added
like
a third
perfect
town,
segue.
if we ever added a third town, then it would be a
Then it would
case
count.
of,
2/3.
no, you'd have that 2/3.
Okay.
So that's actually a perfect segue. So as I mentioned, Scott and I were at the school committee meeting. Mike Topman, the chair, had asked me if I could speak a little bit about exactly that, the process of how the budget gets passed, how it goes on the warrant. And I spoke a little bit about where we're at. The select board did take a vote Monday night to support this budget that has a 5% increase in it for the schools. I think one of the most important things to understand is that right now this is a balanced budget at $15,523,667, and that is balanced using the 2.5% increase on property tax with a new growth number at 350, which is aggressive. June might chase me down the parking lot. So basically all that allowed, as we know, we kind of back into that number. All that allowed was we gave everything that was left over to BBRSD. And so we looked at what the deficits were, and that's the information that I have down here at the bottom. So,
Can
like
you slide it just a little bit?
you want me to make it bigger?
No, we're missing the
Oh.
last column.
Oh,
we
that's
need
fine.
it? We don't
you don't
need
want
it?
you don't need that
Okay.
because the numbers changed. So
Okay.
you don't need
Okay,
that.
okay.
I just didn't take it off because
Okay,
they might
no worries.
maybe they might change again. Yeah. So the school has delayed their vote until March 21st. So it is possible that these numbers could change. They wanted to allow a little more time to work with the towns. What I explained to them was, unfortunately, the 5% is where we're at, and it would really come down to the vote. So it's going to be a matter of what the FinCom. Basically, the process is whatever the school committee votes on has to go on the budget. The FinCom can have a different budget. Somebody on the floor can, if the school's budget is higher, can make the motion to go up to the higher amount in the school's budget, much like, you all thought. The process gets far more complicated after that. If it doesn't pass at the school's number, they can come back. It goes to a regional meeting, goes to a 1/12 budget. There's a whole, rigmarole that goes on there that hopefully we won't have to get into, which would be really good. But basically what we're looking at is level services numbers that they have given us for BMS are $4,106,075, and for Tohoto, $3,206,381. Now that is our portion of the Tohoto assessment. So what that does, when I plug those numbers into my current budget, that creates a $444,066 deficit. So I went and plugged in the numbers into my trusty little online calculator, which I add every caveat in the world, again, that could change based on commercial devaluation. It's based on FY23. We have to give a range. It's dangerous to throw those numbers out there, but I understand people want to have a ballpark idea of what the impact on their taxes is. So basically, what are we starting at? The average family tax bill right now is $7,729 in Berlin. And that is based on an average single family home valued at $558,000. Obviously, it goes down if your home's worth less, goes up if your home's worth more. So already at the 2.5%, that represents a $400 increase in and of itself for the average single family home valued at that 500. I'll just say 550 because that makes it a little easier to say.
Sorry, Kristen, let me back up there a minute. So just with the budget, just put aside the school, or just leave the school at 5%.
Correct.
We're still going to see
A $400
increase in our tax, right?
Correct.
So the schools, this is an additive. So we're going to get closer to the average 800 to 900.
Correct.
Thank you.
So
A year.
A year.
right. So and unfortunately, it's because you're starting out with a tax bill of over $7,000. So when you increase within the limits of Proposition 2.5 and new
Right.
growth, $400 is what
Right.
you end up with after the split and everything.
Right.
So
Estimate.
the estimate, yes, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, estimate.
I
I
know
need a
this-
sign that just says
every-
estimate that I can just hold up over my head. So the $400 increase, as I mentioned, is on the average family home at $550, give or take if you have more. That includes a 5% increase for BMS and a 5% increase for Tahanto. Now, we've switched over from percentages to numbers, okay? To get to the level service numbers I just mentioned that are right here, which is, I believe, it's changed a little bit, but I think it's 11.8 for one and 13 for the other. That creates a deficit of that 444.66 that I mentioned. In order to fund that 444.66, now you're talking around about 275, maybe a little more. 263 is what it
263.
comes out to on the calculator, but again, estimate. And that's for your average single family home at 550, so adjust accordingly for what your home is valued at. BBRC also presented a below level services budget, which included those cuts that you were just speaking of the 11 teachers. That creates a deficit of $72,118. That's a smaller number, obviously more like a $45 increase on top of the $400.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So the top one is your 2.5%.
Correct?
The middle one is about 11 something. Correct?
What do you mean
No,
the middle
no.
one?
The middle, the level funding,
That's services, not funding.
services. Oh, services.
Level services, yeah.
Do you have to add those two together?
No,
do.
Janet.
So
this
it's
is-
going to be.
No, we've had confusion introduced to this process because we're getting from the school district, we're getting from the school committee two different budgets. So that's what Kristen ran through here. And the one budget,
Yes,
they
Janet.
say, oh, if we just keep our school services level, this is how much money we need. But if you guys insist on giving us less money, then we're going to go below what our level services are, right? And then they put the scary stuff in that, like, we're going to get rid of 11 teachers, right?
That wasn't my question though.
But that's what
you're-
Kristen ran. That's what Kristen ran.
No,
was
I
to
think
look
what
at
your
the two.
question comes down to is.
My question is, in order to do the top, if we're going to go with the middle one, it's not $400, it's $663.
Correct.
Is my question. And the answer is yes. Okay, that's what I want to know.
$663 what, Janet?
Increase.
Total
In
increase.
total increase in taxes.
Taking the-
Oh, so you're taking the 263 and adding it to
Yeah, because
what
that's-
else? The 2.5.
Because that's what the
That-
middle
you're exactly
piece
right.
is.
Right. Yeah.
Basic-
That's what my question was.
You're
Yeah.
starting at, and I'm going to put my little ad.
Because I think that's where people were getting confused the other night, and that's what I was trying to clarify here. So,
Got it, Janet. Sorry.
no, it's okay. I didn't know how to ask it. I knew it was in my head.
It's a scary thought.
Oh, God, I was closer in your head than...
I've been sitting all day.
You have to stand.
I do have to stand.
Just don't fall. Just slowly.
Does that make more sense?
Well, I had it in my head, but I think
No, but
people
the
were
way
very
you-
confused about that the other night. I mean,
Confused
I know
everyone last night.
But
No,
again,
no,
it's
no,
an
no.
estimate.
Monday night.
Oh,
Monday
okay.
night.
Just put after
Gotcha.
that estimate.
Yeah,
I said
estimate.
APPX.
Oh, is that what that means?
Approximate.
Oh, okay.
Approximate. Yeah, she's on it.
Fine, I'll do
Why
it.
don't you bookend it and put an EST at the end of it?
We have now estimated.
Sorry.
I'm with
So,
you, Jim.
so my question is, we have the 2.5,
I just thought that was
the
something
first
fancy.
one.
Very nice.
What is the percentage in the middle one? You don't have that in there.
Okay, so the middle one, there really isn't. You're talking about the level services. There's
Yeah.
only two options really. So ignore that's why I wrote this out kind of. Ignore the
Okay.
$400 for a minute.
Okay.
So the 400 is there no matter what.
Oh, yeah, yes, I got it now. Sorry.
So then your
Yeah.
options are: do you
Yeah.
add 263 estimate, or do you add 45 estimate?
yeah.
If you add 45, that's your below level services.
Right.
That's the cuts they were speaking of.
Mhm.
If you add 263, that's just level.
So at level funding, were they doing cuts?
No, but they're saying there are additional needs they had that aren't funded because if you recall, they initially came in with a 20 and 22%
Correct. That's what I'm
increase.
trying to figure out how we got from 20 to 5.
That's what I think got confusing. So initially the district came in with a level funded at 12 and 13 for BMS and Tohoto respectively, and an above level funded at 20 and 22 respectively, if I remember correctly. Then they were trying to work with us because I think that the reaction was like, there's just no way we can fund this. So they went back and they came back and looked more at the 12 and 13 one and what they could do there. And then we still said, we're at 5. So they said, okay, well, if we make these cuts, then we can go to 9. So that's where the 9 came from.
And then along the way there came in the state monies, which,
Yeah, and then at one point a
Nancy picked them up.
14% number was thrown. I got confused a little bit, but yeah.
but Nancy did pick them up. So Monday night, we were looking at
Correct.
the current Chapter 70 numbers as
Yes.
the governor proposed. So
Right, and
they
I
were
think
in there,
they
and that
were-
changes the equation
It
a
does.
lot.
And they were trying, I think, to, in all fairness, trying to respond to all of the different questions we had asked. So she had a lot of different slides that presented the numbers in different ways, which I think unfortunately got a little bit confusing because some of them included the capital and some of them didn't. So I got a little bit confused as to which one was actually the assessment and which one was the capital. But I will show you my favorite slide of the whole presentation.
Oh, so we got a presentation on Sunday. There was a new presentation last night, which I haven't seen.
That is this one.
Yeah, okay.
So the key points, I don't like that slide. That's not my favorite one. This is my favorite slide.
I liked this slide as well.
Yeah.
Correct. So this slide shows you basically down here in the red what your this is the level service one.
Uh-huh.
This is for Berlin Memorial.
Yep.
You're at 4.1 million, we'll say. You're at 448, just under $500,000 for capital. And then Berlin's assessment for Tohoto would be 3.2 million with 662 in capital. So that's the level. The below level brings it down from the 4.2 to 3.9, and from 3.2 down to 3, capital remaining the same.
So with the level funding, I guess my question is, what are they losing?
So they have a slide in here about that.
Well, the level they're not losing.
So they have a slide about scaling down their original ask. So this is what they lost from the 2022%. So if I can.
That
make
was
a
above
little
level
bit bigger.
funding, though.
Correct. Is that what I thought? That's what you asked. I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
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 level.
what's the
What are they
difference
losing with
between
level
above
funding?
levels?
Oh, if they go
Services.
below level, what are they losing?
Well, that's above level.
Yep.
Where's the level?
The level, they're not losing anything.
Level is just status quo.
Everybody stays.
Yep.
Everything gets everything. But
We're all
are the
this-
children that are needing services
The special
going to get their
education-
services?
Yes.
So I'm confused because they want to increase services in their level of funding, and they're not losing anything. So where are they taking the money to get the funding for the students that truly need it?
The level funding is taking the special education, which they're required.
I know,
to
I
do.
understand that.
But that is where they're coming from the level. As much as they're saying, they are increasing something. I mean, the level is truly not truly level, I guess. The point is, it truly isn't level. It is level outside of special education, but it is, so it's level plus the special education requirements, the minimum requirements. So I guess that would be the best way to say it. It's level for the rest with the plus special education minimum.
Correct. It's basically, it includes the unfunded mandates, if that's helpful. And this slide, I think, was actually really helpful as well. So this talks about the historical increases in special education across Boylston and Berlin. And you can see, when you look at Berlin, you went from just under 700,000 in FY19 to almost 1.1 million in FY24. So, I mean, that is a $400,000 jump in and of itself right there.
And this is the slide that I was talking with Nancy on, and this was brought up on Monday. Mary was pointing out that it seems like, we'll look at another slide on this one, which are their projections for circuit breaker money. But this slide here makes it look like their projections for revenue for circuit breaker is very low for what they should get next year, because right here, looking at Boylston and Berlin, I mean, you just add up the two numbers, they're just over 2 million, right? Actually, they're 2.2 million.
I need to clarify, that's out of district.
This is the out of district stuff,
Yes.
right? This is out of district. This is out of district special education. So that's about 2.2 million. And as they pointed out, is they eat the first $57,000, at least under the present rules for special education. They have to eat the first $57,000 per student. And then they get, in the present setup, is 75% reimbursement of the remaining amount. Of course, it's in arrears, it'll come next year. So if you did, and they show here the number of students, you got, I mean, like in FY23 projected, actually look, you want to use the FY23 numbers. So it's actually 2 million. I mean, it's just short of 2 million. You see 17 students. And then she explained how that's a difficult number, because they said they do see a lot of special education kids with foster students and stuff like this come in. They're in the school for like 2 months or 3 months. They don't complete the full year. So the numbers are a little funky on this. Yeah, it's not like you have 17 students that are there from September 1st to the end of the school year. But even though you still take the 57,000 number, you multiply it by 17, that's about 1 million. Which leaves you another, I mean, because that's using some of the worst case scenarios. So the worst case scenarios is you have a student that's at 57,000, you get no money from them, right? It's the, if the person only costs 30,000, that's okay, you only have to pay the 30,000. But if they come in at 150,000, now you start getting almost 75% of $100,000. So if you take that number, you're leaving about $1 million between the two. In theory, you should be looking at next year getting 75% of $1 million being 750,000. Yeah. If you look at the revenue projections, they're keeping it pretty much flat at only 300,000.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is across the schools. All
is
right?
this what was talked about?
This is
Monday
this is my discussion. Yes, this is right. So, I mean, obviously, I mean, they got to come down. I mean, they're going to have a conservative number too. I mean, it's just like us trying to work with new growth or whatever.
Sure.
They're trying to, you don't want to project more revenue than you end up having, and then finding out you're cutting in June desperately or whatever month it is that you realize you're overspending. And in my belief is the 300,000 is significantly too low for what they could potentially be getting. I'm not saying they should be saying 750,000, but it seems like it could be 200,000 to 300,000 more projected revenue.
And where's that slide?
There's a lot of slides here.
I know there were way too many. And mine were all stapled. Some were upside down, some were backwards. I didn't have a page 1 through 30 all in the same direction. It was crazy.
I think I can get to it pretty quickly. There wasn't much on the slide. It had a lot of white space. Here it is. It's slide 16.
16.
It's titled Fiscal Year 24 Grant and Revolving Allocations Applied to Budget. Yeah, so look at the circuit breaker monies. That's like, really,
Well, it's Tohoto that's really the one low, because I don't think the other two schools have got the student amounts as much as the other two.
Yeah,
right?
there's actually a
I don't know,
different
but to Scott's
slide.
point, the grant total is 275 for all three schools. And if you do his thumbnail calculation,
I
it
get
ought
it.
to be 75% of the million,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, the actual numbers I'm looking at is slide 23, which they have it broken out. Again, this isn't by school. This is,
Scott, is that last night's or the nights before?
this
23 is
is
last
last
night's.
night's. So,
Yeah.
and
okay.
actually, I should look at, Nancy gave me hers, so. If you look at here, the top part, I mean, they talk about circuit breaker money FY 22, 23, and of course, 24. And this is their beginning, balance, ending, what they target for revenue and expenses. You can see the expenses, but we just added up 275,000, and there's 300,000 targeting in revenue. When you look at, if there's such that big jump with the special education students, and you expect, if again you make the assumption that the rules stay the same and you will be getting the same as what you've gotten before, it seems like that 300,000 number is extremely conservative. Extremely conservative in a situation where you have looking for a lot of money here. Now, maybe it could be wrong, but to me, I'll be watching this number no matter what. What actually happens next year to understand is, did they go extremely conservative on this one?
Right.
Or they could have said the revenue is going to be another, it could be 550 or 600, even though the theory could be 800.
Well, and this number is constantly in flux. I will give you
Yes.
an example. Nancy called me today. There will be an additional 4 students by the end of summer that have high special education needs. So this is all new.
Well, it's because they've got preschoolers probably that, I mean,
I can't get into the specifics
No,
of
but
it,
I mean, I know right now is the time of year where you start getting children assessing for preschool, and if you have special needs at age 3 is when
this
that all
was-
starts.
Let's put it this way, this was unanticipated.
Yeah, wow.
And several of them are out of district.
Sure. So, but that hits the expense, not the revenue side of the balance.
Yeah.
And Scott's point is all about this.
Well, correct, but to my point, as they can come in, they could leave
Right.
and transfer out as
Right,
well. So
right.
that was
Yeah.
the only point I was
No,
trying
so-
to make. So I think
I
that's probably
understand.
why they budget extremely conservatively.
Well, it's very dynamic, isn't it?
It's very dynamic, and that's another reason why schools don't have to line item budget.
Well,
It's
the-
a big part of it is because of the
Right.
flux and the number of students
And you
and
don't
their
want to
individual needs.
you don't want a child not to get educated. That's the
Of course.
That's the most important
we need
to
to
me.
meet their needs.
right.
Absolutely.
We need to
Of course
meet their
not,
needs, and I know everybody feels that way, but it's just so hard when
Yeah.
you're talking dollar and cents. I just.
And another one from Monday night, Nancy talked about the school district that she was in before, obviously, is Sutton. Where the numbers that they're using for keeping a minimum balance going into for the year, in case they have kids that come in, is, again, much more conservative than what they were using in Sutton. She talked about they were just doing a quarter, or the last quarter, and that could produce some extra revenue too that could be targeted to the budget. I mean, again, this doesn't even come close to getting things balanced, but it is where the case, they brought up on Monday. Nothing, it was even discussed yesterday. I just discussed it with her at because obviously they didn't bring that to the school committee to discuss that. But that is something that in the practice that they were using in Sutton that she's familiar with, it's much more conservative here in Berlin Boylston.
Yep. Well,
So they
and
have an additional 4 students anticipated for the fall.
by summer.
Oh, by summer. Oh, that must be aging in then. Okay.
So, I mean, what this all kind of shakes out to sort of leads to the next piece if you're ready to talk about free cash, which
Yes.
I think Scott got.
Just one thing, because I was talking with our audience here earlier, and when you get up at the high level on the town's operational budget, the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District is roughly half. So if we're looking at 15 point something, 0.8, so we're between 7 and 8 million in terms of the town budget. So it's huge. You get a sneeze and we get a cold, right? Which is why we're spending the time on it and pushing on these revenue kinds of questions, because we have to do that, and we're conservative. I think we're fiscally quite sound as a municipality, and so the question is, how do you look at these revenue things? Are we too conservative? Are we not conservative? Right? And I think I'm right with Scott on the comments about the how you project the revenue in the special education fund. I don't think the committee has it where it needs to be.
All right.
Can you show that diagram, or is that still?
Which one were you talking about?
Was it from Friday? The one Amy worked on, the pie chart that showed how our buckets are financing.
I sure can.
Yeah, I think you're still working on the budget, so it's probably not.
I know, and oh shoot.
You can just
I don't think I can
yourself.
access the shared folder from, I've been having trouble with the VPN. Hold on.
Just make sure you have everything come up.
I meant to pull it over onto the desktop.
You have it.
Did she email it to you?
Oh, do you have a question about it?
Well, no, when we were talking about the overall, there was a pie chart in there that was
Yeah.
a nice visual.
These
But there's
holes.
5 of them, and you have to look at all 5 simultaneously to see it, and you can't. So I wrote back and said, you just have the numbers, and they said, it's
In
like the
Maynard.
first tab in the Excel
in
file has
Maynard.
the numbers.
Or
No.
So you can see
That
the
they're cutting the budget.
percentages.
Well, there's also
there's
the
two
bar
from each
graphs
building.
later on that show
Is how they
you
decided to
over
do it.
several years.
I mean, they're shuffling money,
Going from
but
FY 18.
Did I not look far enough on the
And-
sheets?
Probably
They
because she
gave
had
their
a whole
pink
bunch of
slips.
charts, so.
2 months.
let
Yeah.
me-
I mean, usually
Yep.
April
Well, no
30th
matter how you
is
do it,
the-
it's roughly half.
is the day.
And that's been consistent.
And they already
for 5
gave
years.
Yeah.
Feeling like
Half of the town's operating
in the
budget
same position,
is
so
going to
if there's jobs
this
available,
district.
start looking
Alphabet's
now, because
relatively
they
small, it's
felt
a
like they
tenth.
wanted to give
Give
them
them
that
that.
opportunity, which I thought was nice, but it's very hard to work the remainder of the school year,
Yeah. I mean, it's
knowing I'm
just,
not coming back.
It's just like any company, when you get
Yeah.
a merger or that,
Yeah.
until the thing's complete, that people are sitting there
Yeah.
going, am I redundant?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've obviously got to make this larger, I think. So this is FY 23. Nope, that's not the one I want. Nope. Yes.
Oh, that's
Okay.
good.
Yes. Let me see if I can make it just like a little bit. Can you see it?
Can you
Make it
hide
a
the
little bit bigger.
ribbon? Well, that.
Yeah, good call. So this is, I'm gonna just hide this top part. This is an FY 18 through FY 23 comparison across some of the largest portions of our budget. So the trend, just to kind of walk you through here, is if you look at general government, which would be me, accounting, town clerk,
Assessors.
you know, your
Tax collector.
town hall functions, basically.
Yeah.
There's actually been a decrease in the last few years. If you look at public safety, there's been a decrease. If you look at public works, there's been a slight increase.
Mm-hmm.
Human services, way down there, but there's been a slight increase. We're trying to get there, and that is reflective too of what we just talked
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
in mental health and in
Mm-hmm.
what we need to do for counseling. So Assabet has gone up and down a little, but overall that's been an increase. Tohoto, and I'm not sure what the large jump here was between 22 and 23. But then you can see where BMS has gone up as well. So it's hard to, I did a percentage, and I think it came out to, what is it, 53% of our budget is schools? Is that what
Give or
that
take a
worked
few,
out to?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, and keeping in mind minimum per pupil spending, and all of those kinds of things, and rising special education costs. But we've really tried to be very conservative on the town side, and I think that's what this picture shows. So when we talk about can we cut anything to bring it up on the school side, unfortunately, there's just nothing to cut on the town side. We've been going backwards in most areas that are large areas, rather than forward, particularly public safety and our core town hall functions.
And let's keep in mind that your human services has been being budgeted out of ARPA, which we
Yes.
now have to absorb
In our budget, right.
which
Within the next couple of years.
yes, where services were absolutely needed.
Yes.
Gone away is the town nurse. That used to be every town had a town nurse, and we actually lost human services for years, and now we're trying to restore them, but the restoring them is coming from ARPA money, and now we have to absorb that cost.
I was just going to...
Doesn't like you tonight,
It does
Kristen.
not. I was going to save it as a PDF because I thought I could make it even larger, but...
That's all right. We can see it. It's fine.
No, it just messes it up.
Well, you go up to your little 3 dots.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one of them. Don't update. Leave me alone.
You want me to look at a tab, name it.
All right. So that, I think that one I like the best. We have it in a lot of different. So that one, should you like stringy, noodly looking lines? That's this one. So this basically shows you've got your. Let me zoom in just a little bit. Your, basically increases mapped out by linear graph as opposed to bar graph. But same data, FY18 to FY23 across the major
Well, you can
core
really
areas.
see where public safety is pretty flat, and so is, I don't know what that purple one is.
The purple is public
Oh,
works and facilities.
Is this
yeah.
number coming out of the levy, or does the public works reflect the fact that we've got funding coming from the mitigation?
This is based on what you approve at town meeting.
So this is the levy. Oh, wait a minute, it's both?
No,
It could be both.
It could
It
be
could be both.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have, this does not include special articles or anything like that, so it would only be the items that are in the general categories.
So to some
that you-
extent, it understates the impact of the schools.
Yes. Yes, because
Capital's not in there. Oh, no, it is.
it is currently, but before,
It
remember, it was
was-
special articles.
that's right,
So
okay.
that could be what, that big,
Jump between
Could be.
22
Yes,
and 23
yes,
is how
yes.
we
Yeah.
changed the way that we account for capital in the budget.
Correct.
Right. There is that one jump too, that with the merger, there was also the schools took over the
the health
retirement,
insurance and
stuff
the
like that. So there
retirees.
is
Yeah.
that,
There is a
There's
little-
been
there is
changes.
that glitch there that you have to remember.
And we had COVID weirdness going on too.
Well, yes, COVID didn't
Correct.
help any,
Yeah.
but there
That's
is,
where you see a lot of the budgets go down was because of COVID, because we all cut
But theirs went up because they got
contracts and a lot
lots
of
of
it.
funding.
Yeah.
So here's another variant. Hold on, I'm gonna make it bigger.
That's fine. We can see it good. Fine.
So again, 18 through 23. And now you can kind of see by year over year, what percentage or what portion of the budget is taken up by each of the core functions. So our largest cost on the town side is public safety, which is standard. And that would be followed by general government, and then public works. So hopefully that's helpful. Let me see if I have any other cool ones in here for you while I'm at it.
so
And
in the,
thanks to Amy. Amy
Yes,
put
thank
this
you.
all together, so many
This
thanks
is
to her.
her,
Her brainchild.
so I was going to say, this is her allowance so that she can be creative. instead of giving her a raise.
At least we want to make her happy, right?
Exactly.
So when you look at that little hockey stick thing on Tohoto, if you look, fiscal 22 was 6.4% above fiscal 21, and then fiscal 23 was 5.4% above fiscal 22, the previous year. So those percentage increase are out of line with everything else.
Well, I
that the
think
town
June
doing.
Yeah.
June has the answer for that, which I don't think you heard.
It's all right.
No, it's okay.
Oh, you think the capital thing? I heard what you said, but
No,
Yeah.
one
Well-
of it was the full regionalization went in effect.
It was insurance and
And,
all of
they
that
took
got
over
shifted to them
retirement.
and took away from us.
I'm just talking about Tohoto.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
talking
where
about-
that's.
And wasn't Tohoto already?
Oh, Tohoto was already
Tohoto was
regional.
already
It was only
regional.
the
It was
It
elementary
was
BMS.
Berlin
schools
Memorial
that-
that would have gone up.
Oh, I thought it was Tohoto.
No.
No,
we were
Tohoto was
regional.
already.
Oh,
regional.
okay.
Yeah. So the Tohoto percent increases
So no
were,
capital in
those
22.
2 years were both much higher than anything else in the budget.
Yeah, that does. I was thinking
Yeah,
it
she
was yeah. The
You see it in the
insurance,
hockey stick when you look at the lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of it was our percentage ownership went up in the number of students the last couple of years.
Oh well.
Right, which could drive those
Yeah.
percentages, Scott, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's just like how Assabet's been more students going to Assabet. Right. So
Yeah.
so going back to the select board,
Yes.
did they vote on the schools?
No, they voted that, let me see how I word this, how they worded it rather, that they were supportive of the 2.5% property tax increase budget that included a 5% increase for the schools. And because they felt, since you take, input from the select board, they wanted to give some type of guidance on how they were feeling about this to you all.
Right. Okay, and then we know on the on Boylston side, I think some of it was a little confusing on some of that stuff when people were trying to describe. I know they had one person from the their select board and one from the finance committee. When Eric had emailed me after their meeting on Monday night, his number saying what they saw it as being a percentage increase in their levy was, he said 4%.
Yes.
Nobody was saying that. Yesterday, another person from Boylston Finance was saying 3 something. And it's like, so there was a little confusion of that type of stuff there. But I mean, basically, what the finance committee I know came from their side was, they had the levy capacity, right? So they don't need a 2.5 override. The levy capacity is there. It would be overall, I guess, on their side, it's 4%. Over increase, instead of ours like at targeting 2.5. What does ours overall percentage?
To get there? I was
If
just
we were
gonna
at
show
levy,
you.
yeah.
6
Ours is 6.
to get there.
And he also said that part of theirs is offset. They've just had the one-time 800,000 new growth from some
yeah,
business
they had
that
it.
came in. That they said is
Yeah.
obviously a one-time thing, but that will smooth out for them the jump.
Taxpayers to,
Is that who it was?
yeah, I can't remember
Amazon?
which one
Was
it
it
was.
Amazon?
FedEx, was it a FedEx?
He didn't say what the
FedEx?
business was, or
Amazon.
They
right?
said something.
No,
that-
FedEx.
FedEx.
FedEx. I knew it was one of them.
So basically, it would jump the budget up that $444,000 that we talked about down here that formed this deficit. So what I just did up here was I plugged in these numbers here. It obviously created a deficit, which I had to increase property taxes to 6% from 2.5 to offset. Obviously, there's a little end change, but
Okay, so we're at 6. They're at
yeah.
4, but again, they're 4 because of the new growth.
6% of
correct.
5.
So we normally go up 2.5 because the standard is Prop 2.5.
Just what people expect. It's not so much the
Yeah, no. That's
yes.
Right.
it's-
Can you go
Right.
back to
Yeah.
that other slide?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, technically, you go slightly above 2.5 because it's 2.5 on the limit, and if you're going at
558.
a smaller number,
I just want to undo it because I
No,
don't
that's
want to
fine. I
say
was
that in
just
my
trying to figure out what it
budget.
was.
Okay. There we go. So basically, what you're doing is right now the budget's level funded at 15,523,667. So what I did was I just plugged in, so this is all running right now based off the TA budget because you didn't have all of your numbers filled. Now I'm going to switch it over to your budget, which is just they're basically the same. I've kept them the same. So, so I just plugged in their requested numbers. So you can see that ups the revenue needed to the expenditures to 15,967, leaves us in the hole, the 444,066. So then, all I basically do is it's kind of a plug and play. I go back to our local property taxes, which as you can see up here right now are at a 2.5%. And I played around with it until I got to a number that brought me back to a positive balance that was close to zero. So obviously I can take the 16,000 off the taxes, but it's basically a 6%, just under a 6% increase.
But that'll give us a little bit to play with offset.
Did you want me to keep it? Yeah, well, because
we have no play.
I took new growth to too far.
Yeah.
So
The 350.
So when we do the recap sheet, there is no, like we did last year to help offset the cost.
That was a one-time.
All the local receipts.
Right, that was,
which now we're kind of
right,
uncomfortably high.
Right, you had, I think, you basically guide from the new growth came in almost 200,000 more, and you took 100,000 or so
Like 200,000
from the
plus local.
for the local because of now that we had.
We took almost 400,000.
We were
total.
more clear about what the hotel is bringing in.
Yep.
But now that we're clear, you brought that into the reality, and now it's unless something special happens, it's
Right.
We know that's pretty much should be steady.
It's part of the base now.
Yes, it is the base.
There is nowhere to go up, which is why if you go and look at the revenue estimates, go back. If you go and look at between 23 and 24 for local receipts, you'll see that they go from 1.196 to 1.201. They go up $5,000. Some of the line items went up a little bit, some went down, but overall, I was only able to capture another $5,000 comfortably. So because of that large reset in 23.
But we're staying at the 2.5%. I'm correct.
That's up to you all.
Yeah. So this.
Well, no, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
So right now we're at 2.5,
with the 5%
balanced with 5% to the schools. So let me undo all
Yeah,
this
that's
that I
right.
did.
Yeah.
Go away, go back. And we're back to zero. Magic. So one thing I wanted to talk about was, looking at free cash because, and I know that seems like it's a sharp left turn, but it's not, and you'll see why in a minute, and Scott will be very good at explaining this. If you turn to that free cash plan, I just did kind of a real quick and dirty spreadsheet here. Basically, there's a couple things I need input from you on for free cash. So our free cash came in, as we mentioned, high because of the department turnbacks during COVID at $3,077,287. I looked at the warrant articles that I am recommending to fund out of free cash, and I need a little bit of guidance from you all. Prior year bills, I have to fund out of free cash. It's a prior year bill. It can't be like a inter-transfer within the FY23 budget. So there's a $1,000 prior year bill. Not a huge deal. We talked about the need to replenish the reserve fund. I just put in 50 as an initial starter. We can talk about that. If you pull up the other document, the free use of certified free cash guidelines, this is how I arrived at the rest of the numbers that are on that sheet. So basically, so basically what you're doing is you can see the historic free cash over the years down here. You can also see the large jump basically between 2020 and 2023 where you had 1.2 in 2020, 1.7 21, 2.1 then 3.
Can you project 24?
I have a crystal ball at home.
No.
No. But so basically what you start with is on the left, you can put no more than $150,000 in special articles or up to 15. This is your policy, by the way. Up to 15%, whichever is less. So I just put in the 150. Then up to 30% can go to capital. That number works out to 923,186 as a cap. Then not less than 10% to stabilization. So that number is 307,729. Not less than 10% to capital, to OPEB, which works out to 307,729. And 10% to general stabilization, same number. Now, one of the things this does talk about is until OPEB is funded or gets up and running, that money should basically be put temporarily in general stabilization and with an understanding that it's earmarked for OPEB when we get there. And then you have to have a set aside that you don't touch, which is not less than 25% that rolls year to year. And that's 769,322. So before I flip back, does anyone have any questions on that one? Okay. So based on that, that's how we arrive at these lovely numbers, which is your amount that we can do for capital. General stabilization is double because it includes OPEB, capital stabilization number, and a lovely do not spend. So basically that leaves us with $410. So I'm sorry, $410,000. That would be great.
Same
$410. Go have a nice dinner. No, $410,000 that you can talk about, and I'll turn it over to Scott because I know there was a different funding mechanism that Nancy had mentioned to you last night that we might be able to use.
Yes, I don't have any other additional information. She said she was going to get to me. So when she worked in Sutton, and this is something I brought up, I don't even probably even remember with Margaret last year when we were talking about the schools, because again, it was special education was a big piece, because we were seeing those 6%. And because everything is in arrears with the special education and even falls into Mary's comments here is like, trying to fund a point of, where they have a place to smooth out when the special education numbers spike. And because basically what we see is they have peaks and extreme peaks and valleys, especially in our school district. And they want to have themselves a funding mechanism, a balance, but they got like $25,000 or in it. It's not even reasonable for them accomplish anything with it. So I had mentioned this briefly. I mean, it ended up never really going any place because one, it was kind of like, how do you manage this? Because you want to have it especially just for special education, of putting money aside that's just for special education. And then, of course, it gets funded back at some time in the future because you don't know when the value will come because everything's in arrears, and then could go back into that account. Turns out this isn't a new thing. Sutton does it, and that's where Nancy came from. So they have a special article that's just for special education that they've funded, and so the schools can tap during the year when they have a spike, knowing that they'll get some level of reimbursement, especially particularly the out of district tuitions that are causing the spikes, that they can withdraw from that account. And then hopefully there's some points in there you have the valleys where you'll have that, because you're it got the expense and the state doesn't get it back to you until the following year. Then when they have that excess, they can then put that excess into that account. So this would be what they've been trying to do at the school level, which they haven't had the money to even get it really off the ground. I mean, they barely off the ground. So this is something that does exist. Of course, granted, Sutton is by them. Well, I think they're by themselves. I don't know. Are they regional? Are they part of a region?
No, I don't
No,
think so.
they're by
That
themselves.
would
Yeah,
be easier.
So that obviously this would need to be in coordination with Boylston, but is it something that we could do here? She was going to send me the policies from Sutton and that stuff, and we just talked about it last night. I mean, I just brought it up to her because I had mentioned it to Margaret. I was like, but can it work? because you want it for that purpose and not being, and then you want to be able to have the money come back to it when the state does reimburse. So
Sorry,
It
Scott.
exists.
Sorry, Scott. Where do the funds sit? Are they in the town or are they in the school district?
they would actually sit in an article that the school would be able to withdraw from.
So it'd be a special article.
Special article. So it wouldn't sit directly in their,
So because it's a special article up by the town, the funds sit with the town.
Correct. They'd
And then
submit
there's a
an
back and
invoice.
forth with the school district.
yes.
So that little $10,000 that Robert Conway created.
Or maybe it's 10,000 now instead of 25, but yeah,
Well,
it's tiny,
that was
right.
what that
Yeah.
was from, a month or two ago, listening to this. That's that Bob Conway set it up as a dedicated or a restricted stabilization fund for just the special education monies.
Right. So it would work just like any other article. So say, you have a fire truck article for $880,000, you get a bill and you pay the bill.
Yeah.
This time the vendor is the school.
Right, understood, okay.
So what could we do? I mean, look, especially
a good
the
idea,
key
Scott.
is the fact that somebody else has done this, because I thought it was like one of
Yeah.
those, like, where, and when I just brought it up to her, and I was shocked that she goes, oh, Sutton did this, or has this. Because what I would like to get off the table is dealing with the special education piece, because even though we just talked about, they're saying level services. And it turns out level services is not descriptive of the situation. It's level services plus the increases in what they're obligated to do for special education. Can we get rid of that increases from special education spikes? I mean, it's not going to be one-to-one for their numbers, but it can alleviate those spikes, because basically you got the spikes in the valleys, and you can even see it in one of the other charts they had of showing special education, how it goes up and down. And hopefully we have some extreme spikes here. Hopefully sometime in the future you'll have extreme valleys too, or else maybe it'll just be a few small valleys that end up, to get that money then put back towards the stabilization, or basically it's a special education stabilization article, and I guess I would best description for it.
Scott,
Not a stabilization, just a special article.
Yeah, special article.
So if we look at our cash guidelines,
Yep.
not more than 150,000 to a special article, right?
They are just guidelines.
I know
Yes,
they're
yes.
guidelines, but they're there for a reason.
Sure, absolutely. This is an
I mean,
unprecedented and unusual approach.
Would this be something that we would operate? Do you see it falling into that first column?
I didn't actually investigate from this standpoint at all.
We just
Yeah.
It
just
does
ignore
fall.
guidelines.
If you're trying to
For somebody
characterize
else.
where it falls within this plan, it is the first column. It is a non-capital
Exactly.
article.
Special article.
Right.
It seems funny that we're comparing hot top to special education.
Right?
So
Fair
I can see some
So-
parallels.
The only thing
Yes,
is that
design.
if you did this as a special article, it couldn't be refunded in any way by the school directly.
It
That-
can be. It
Can't
can't
be.
be.
Well, that's what we want to figure out is how we do that, because she said they do put money back, so it probably ends up being like part of their excess and deficiency or something. I don't know exactly how they would
Yeah,
do
'cause
it.
It would have been different if it was Borough Memorial. Before regionalization, we could have done it. But because now it's all a regionalized thing, one Tohoto is only a percentage, so we wouldn't want to get stuck for more than what we. But if we
Right.
did it for Berlin, we could do it as a special article. It's just refunding it or getting the money back into it. I don't know if that would actually ever happen.
You mean having
So, like, I'm just
on the
gonna-
back end getting their
Yes. So-
reimbursement to go back into it
Yeah.
to replenish it. Yes, because that essentially is like a revolving fund, but you're revolving across a district to or a
Yeah, see, they're
a
not
regional
any
district
part
to
of
a
us. It's
town.
a regional
Yeah.
district. It's not. If they were still unregionalized, we could do that because then we could have a revolving fund even.
Well, we could only do it for Berlin.
But we could only do it for Berlin, not for Tohoto because
But
it's regionalized.
I don't know that we could do the last part. I don't think we could
Oh, we could
expect to get
definitely
it
do a
back
special article,
We-
but there's
we
no
can
way to
fund
make
it that way and avoid putting that through taxes.
Could we condition it that the district puts it back into that fund
But
and doesn't
the
apply for
mechanism
something
may
else?
not be there. That's what I'm saying, is that
Sorry,
we would, because then it would be one of the, it sounds silly, but we could do it this first time around. It would come from free cash and we would fund it.
exactly.
We would pay it out for special ed. So it was pretty much like we would be giving them money for their line item out of free cash, let's just say. But for them to be able to give us back any money, we would have to appropriate that money to them in their next year's assessment for them to then cut a check to us for what? Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So
it's
it's
not
one,
a
or we
mechanism.
would have to deduct that from there. So
Or-
it's that whole, I don't.
Yes, I mean, that's the whole, right, that's the whole piece is like
Yeah.
the cap, or is it something that you come up with some other, instead of moving the money, we see they're part of the capital plan, and do you look at certain things when they get their funding back, they're not getting that for their capital, and they need to use it for their capital items? I mean, it comes into a trust area at some point, right? But as long as you have, we understand what it is,
Yeah.
and we basically come up with agreements and going, okay, you all of a sudden, 2 really expensive kids that are special ed go away, and now you in that year get a lot of money back that you don't have the special, especially the out district, to cover. So you end up having this decent amount of money. You look and say, well, that money you need to allocate towards or put into your accounts for the capital that's not going to come from our free cash. I mean,
Yeah,
there
so
is.
They would have to do that, I think, internally at the region. I don't think we can do it as a crossover.
We can't, no.
I don't see it as, I mean, maybe there is a way, but as far as actually in and out, because like, I couldn't see us, how would they give us the money? They would have to put it towards special ed.
They'd have to put it in their own stabilization fund, but
I
this
think
is the
that's what
thing.
they would have to do, is we would almost be giving them seed money.
If
you
it,
wanna,
if there was a vote taken within the schools that they would fund out of the reimbursements, that they would keep that stabilization fund at the level that we started,
we,
right?
yeah.
If we had that kind of vote, that we could take that as part of the article perhaps and say to the town, we support this article, the school has agreed they're going to continue to use the stabilization, they're going to continue to take money that comes in from the state and put it into the stabilization, the special ed stabilization. I don't know if all of that is doable. That's a little
That might
complicated.
be the only way that it could be done, is,
So that they
but-
fund it, not necessarily us. And if
Exactly.
we wanted to fund it year to year, we could bring another special article.
Well, one, we can find out the
Yep.
policies and how they're doing inside.
Yeah, I
So
would
that
like
would
to
be
see
the one
that.
piece. I mean, granted, they're only one school district, it's easier, but if we understand the details of what they did or didn't do, that gives us a base to work
Mm-hmm.
from.
because we were actually trying to figure out a way that we could do
But
that.
if they're taking the money for special ed, right? That means it's not coming out of us that year. So we would be saving on that end, correct? Is that how
They
I'm?
wouldn't be assessing us because they could use it out of the
Right, so
stabilization.
why couldn't we just take the money that we might say in assessment and re-put it into the fund? So here's what it would be if we didn't have this fund, but we have this fund, so we're gonna take this, so now we're gonna save you on this end. So then we could just put that money that we're saving from there to there.
Yeah, but you don't know if you're going to be saving it or not.
Well, that's true,
You
too.
know what I mean? Because they,
Yeah, it's so it's just so hard because you don't know from year to year how much you're.
and technically, I mean, once we give it to them, it's theirs.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the thing.
and then
I
they
mean,
can, yeah.
They've been really good in the past, and I'm not saying they wouldn't be, but what if next year special ed goes up again and it doesn't come down? Now what?
Well, that's
Now
the.
no children left. All the children are still there. That means it's going to be level again next year plus.
Right, well, that, exactly.
But
That's
we
the-
don't have this extra money now because now our free cash has gone back to normal of $1 million.
I think we have to do
So-
it as a one-time deal, Jim.
So,
I think
but
yes.
what I'm saying
One-time
is
deal.
that you have to be careful when you do it as a one-time deal because it may be level starting next year. That's my only major concern is if we take it out of free cash, then that means every year we're going to have to do that,
Right.
or
Or
at
you're
some
kicking
point
the
we're going
can
to
down
have
the
to
road.
Yeah.
really hit the taxpayers really hard. That's my only concern with using free cash to actually fund an ongoing budget. It's not a one-shot deal,
You're correct.
which scares me, just
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
no offense, but if everybody leaves and we get new people and then all of a sudden, all bets are off and we start all over again, and now taxpayers are going to be the ones to...
Yep.
I feel like this decision, honestly, and this is just my opinion, I feel like this decision rests with the taxpayers at this point.
It really
Do
does.
they want, do they understand why the need is there? And I think the schools have made that point very clear. They need to understand the ramifications of not increasing their taxes, and the ramifications of increasing their taxes. And I think at this point, we can put forth a balanced budget if you would like at the 5%, and also put forth the school budget and ask the voters to decide, because I personally don't feel comfortable, especially I'd love to say I live here. I don't want to make that decision for folks that live here.
Well, yes, that's where I've been leaning towards it has to be debated at the town. I mean, I think as much as we don't want to get to the point of one town doing something, one town not doing something, right? But we do need to have that discussion, and it's not just a case of, we're going to, well, first of all, just endorse a very big increase and not really be able to communicate fully that before town meeting. I think it does need to be something that can be amended on the town floor, and going from there, that debate can be had. Because basically that's what we've been having, is debate from Monday night, Tuesday night. I don't know how Boylston is looking to approach it. As much as, they said, Eric indicated, just like, we do, we know that we had the levy capacity to fund it. It's just going to bump up taxes.
Right.
And it's a permanent bump up, too. It's not something that, it's as much as those set. Last night we were talking, it was like it was a slightly higher percentages from what you ran, but it was like the 350 number, because we were using the 14%, I think. And it was like, it's not just a 350 where we talk about other type of things where it's like a one-time $350 charge. You're going to get 350 your taxes this year, 350 next year, 350 after that.
It compounds.
And we know the plan that they came forward was adding all the stuff. I believe they're going to come forward wanting to add all that stuff over the next few years, and we're not going to be talking about just, say it's 263 this time. It'll be 250 the year after that, another 250, another 300, or what is it going to be? Where next thing 3, 4, 5 years from now, they tacked on another $800 to $1,000 that you're paying.
Right.
It's incrementally coming. So, because I don't think they're done where things are. So I think definitely the debate has to be had with the town.
And I don't by any means want to create any type of showdown on town meeting floor. That I'm not trying to advocate. I just think there are competing interests, and I feel that we've tried to work together as best we can, but unfortunately, because of the numbers and the way they've worked, we are miles apart. Mm-hmm. And a decision has to be made. And my personal feeling is that should be made by the voters.
I know.
It sounds right.
So can I just have a mechanism question then? So if we vote tonight to present the 5% version with the balanced budget, how does the school budget fit in to this? Will that be also tacked into the report as an alternative?
Correct.
So we'll have an alternative. It will be in the report.
Right.
So
There'll be a proposed. So say you wanted to support this budget as it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
This would be your
the
balanced budget at 2.5% with tax increase, with 5% increase for the schools. That would be your recommended FinCom recommended budget.
Mm-hmm.
You also are legally obligated to put the school's budget in the school's request in the warrant.
Okay.
That is their proposal. Your recommendation is different.
Okay.
That way voters, when they see the warrant, see the two options, they see that one's higher, they see that there is the possibility that that higher number can be voted.
I was going to say, just go up to there so they can,
What am I looking at?
if you go up to the school's budget,
Yep.
oh, that's balanced right now, but so this is what they'd see. So,
Oh, yeah, exactly.
so you're seeing where they've requested the 4106. So that will be there so the taxpayers can see that this is a possibility. This is what they're requesting.
Correct. But in order for us to balance the budget at the 2.5% tax increase, it would have to be 3,778,242.
And that way there, the school could actually get up and make a motion on the floor.
Correct. And the superintendent, by the way, and I've got to speak to Barry, and I have an email out to him. The school superintendent is afforded the opportunity to speak, and I did inform the school committee of that last night.
So you don't really have to put forth two things. You just show that this was what we requested at 14. I'm trying to get my
I think I would call it out a little more clearly.
Oh,
Because I would put what the school's request is, and I would put, because it's broken down into sections in the warrant anyways.
We actually
And my
do
other
it by
clarifying
school.
question is,
Yep.
okay, so they've asked for Berlin Memorial, they've asked for 4.1 million.
Yeah.
If between now and then they're like, oh, we need even more money, can they ask for more above that on the floor?
No,
No.
not on the floor.
Well, wait a minute. First of all, that 4.1 they haven't voted on yet.
Okay,
So once they vote, that number does not change.
okay, so when they vote, it doesn't really matter what we have in our budget, it's what they vote at their meeting.
Right. This is a more of a place. That's why they're highlighted in yellow. Those are placeholders right now because the number has changed and the school has pushed the vote off another 2 weeks because they're still discussing and figuring out exactly what they want to put forth. But as of yesterday, the numbers were the 4.1 and the 3.2. So that's why they're in there. The reason we can't finalize this budget is because ASAP is supposed to take, I think, their vote tonight. And then BBRSD will take their vote on the 21st. Once I have those firm numbers, they go in here, they're locked in here, they cannot change. The town can vote to fund less than those numbers, but they cannot vote to fund more.
Okay, and so
Or they can vote to fund that
so
number.
their deadline is also everybody else's deadline for the town report then? Because if they don't,
So this doesn't go in the town report because it's
okay.
Yeah, I would love to be able to do it, but that's your 2022 town report. So typically the way it's done is you put your 2022 budget information in there. This is going to have to go out with the warrant a little bit later on.
Okay.
So
But the warrant does have a deadline. I
But
mean,
do
it's
they?
not
But
like
does the
it's-
school?
Oh, yeah.
Does the
Because it
school
still
have
has
a deadline
course.
for
Yeah.
giving you that vote, or could they wait until like April 30th to make because town meeting's May 1st?
no, we give
No.
them an estimated deadline. I mean, these are, we've asked them to, and I believe this is within. Well, we gave them a March 17th deadline.
I think if you go down, it actually tells you what the deadlines are for, because I think it says that it
Oh,
has
because
to be
it's statutorily,
The
for.
bylaw
April
says
24th,
that it
isn't
has
it?
to be in people's hands by a certain date.
Yeah, not, right, because not later than 45 days prior to the first annual town. So that date is
town
May
meeting's
17th.
April 1st. I mean, May 1st, right?
Right,
Yeah.
so it's 45 days from that is March
Yeah.
17th, so.
Yeah.
Because it has to be able to be printed in people's hands, at least I think it's 7 days before the town
That's the
meeting.
regional, okay, so that's the regional agreement. Okay, so I'm gonna have to reach out, I guess they'll have to vote next week.
Well, the April 17th has to be in our hands by March 17th.
No,
No.
deadline to post the warrant is April 24th. Deadline for mailing is April 12th.
Oh, April, okay.
But we've got to get it all printed and ready to go and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
So you're saying they're legally required to have that budget number by the 17th?
According, not legally, but, well, according to the agreement we have with the regional school district, between the town and the
Okay.
regional school district.
Okay.
Um,
So they can't ask for an extension to provide that?
I have to look into it, to
Okay.
be honest. Personally, I don't know. I don't see what the difference 4 days makes, but I don't know. I have to read the agreement.
Everything, and I think,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, this isn't a normal.
I mean, we could be real sticklers for an agreement, or we could work together. But I need to read the agreement to make sure there's not some type
So-
of mass general law statutory reason or something that I'm missing.
Yeah,
If
but-
it's
well, I
just
think- I
a
think-
town school agreement,
Well,
that's different.
what I've heard from several of the meetings is that because of all the new people, there's been some confusion about what the processes are.
Sure.
And so for something like this, it would be really awful if we weren't following the correct guidelines and have even more of a mess to deal with.
Yeah, my understanding of this calendar was it was more of a guide. So
Mhm.
I'll go back and look at that.
Okay.
So, devil's advocate,
Yep.
we get to the town vote and the town votes to fund the higher budget, then it's just going to increase the taxes to 6% versus
Yep.
4%.
2.5, you mean?
So you'll
Yes.
still have a balanced budget, you just have to increase the taxes to balance it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just
Yes.
wanted to make sure I understood that all correctly.
But it would be from 2.5 to 6, not from 4 to 6. It's a
Yeah.
substantial jump.
Right.
Yep.
And I would like to recommend that if we did have to do this, that they would be able to do some sort of a more summarized, precise budget from the school, just so it's more like that one there on Assabets where, just so they can try to explain where the increases are coming from, because, I mean, I know what I'm looking on a lot of these, and I have to say, I'm just totally,
I mean, I have
like,
sent
so
this.
confused by the
It's been
time I.
incomprehensible.
It is, and it's not necessarily trying to be a negative
Nope.
impact, it's just, I think that they would actually have a better chance at getting this money if they could actually show by line items where the increases are coming from and why, and also all the list of the revenues and why. So I just think that that would be more helpful, and I don't know what we need to possibly send to the school.
Well, I said that last night, so I'm hoping that is, because one of the things I said was, I think it would be really helpful for folks to understand why we've historically funded at 4 to 6%, and now that's not enough and we have to go to 14. So it'd be really helpful if they could show exactly what those expenditure increases are and perhaps what revenue decreases there are to offset them. And I got some emphatic nods from the principals and the school committee, and I think the point was well taken. Because I'm trying to say, we want, in the interest of transparency, everybody to understand. Because if I were a voter and I just went, well, why has 4 to 6% been fine for X number of years, and all of a sudden it has to be 14? I think that the school should be afforded a fair opportunity to explain that increase, a large portion of which is unfunded mandate special education. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we have always, the town has always been very supportive of the school and supporting what they need and what they want.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've actually really been
At least 50.
very much for, we had to, a few years back, cut teachers because of reasons. I don't remember offhand. And it took us years to get those teachers back in the budget, and now I would hate to think about losing them again. I don't want to see that as a, we went down to one classroom, and it's always for one grade, and it's always a battle because that grade moves every year, and it just causes such discord within the school because my child's in 3rd grade and there's 2 teachers, but now the 4th grade is going to be 1, and then that grade is always revolving, and it just there's such animosity. I just don't want to go back to that.
No, I don't think anybody does. And I hate to sound robotic in this, but it literally is a cut and dry numbers game. It has nothing to do with wants, needs, justifications,
I know.
anything. I said it last night. I said it before. I'll say it again. I'm a proud public school grad. You're not going to find a bigger supporter than me of public schools. It got me where I am today. If we had the money, I would say go for it. If it wasn't going to have a significant impact on taxpayers, and one of the things I didn't get the opportunity to say, but I think Scott touched a little bit on last night, was that a third of our folks in Berlin are seniors on fixed incomes. We have an actively used food pantry. We have a lot of folks that are land rich but cash poor, and their taxes are already really high when they bought a house, perhaps at $50,000 or $60,000. So, you hate to say, you're not trying to pit town versus school or seniors versus parents, but this is our democratic process, and I think we need to let the democratic process happen.
It does, but Kristen, we're in an unnecessarily difficult point here because of the loss of institutional knowledge on the school side and the failure to bring forward a comprehensive plan. And I'm not calling out any individual, but and I haven't been on this committee that many years, but I haven't seen ever anything like this. And then I look at the asset bit, and it is smaller and simpler, but every year they come through and it's consistent, and it's just like they know what to do and they do it. They just execute on it. So we're in an unfortunate circumstance because a piece of this is really about that loss of knowledge. And so anyway, you sent us, Kristen, this little memo. This is Massachusetts Department of Elementary Regional School District budget process. Here's your timing. Must adopt the budget 45 days before the first annual member town meeting.
It is, and both of our meetings are May 1st.
45 days before, right, but not later.
That must be the math.
Oh, but not later than March 31. So that only comes if
it's later, I suppose.
Not later than March 31 and not earlier than February 1. With the approval of the majority of the member communities, the superintendent may submit the budget following the notification of the annual local aid distribution.
When's town meeting?
7th, I just did the math. The 17th is 45 days.
And when are they voting?
The 20th. That 17th is a Friday. They're voting the following Tuesday.
So it's not time enough.
Well, technically that says they have up to March 31st.
Only if the town meeting is later than
Then May 1.
May 1.
Oh,
Later than
yeah.
45 days.
Do they have another school committee meeting do they have one next week?
Yes.
Do they?
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
They'll call it too.
Yeah, I'm
To
going to have
inform
to
them, they'll
call.
call it.
Yeah, because they'll have to get it on the calendar because it's got to be open meeting law, so
Yeah.
you got to think of that too.
Yeah, but obviously the sooner you inform them, the better.
Oh.
They'll call it.
As in tonight,
tonight.
hating to call people at 10 o'clock at night, but important. So.
Oh, God, is it 10 o'clock?
If
Yeah.
you
All right,
call
so-
from home, you won't be able to.
You're having fun.
No, I
Time
was thinking
goes
they
by
would do it on the
quickly.
they meet
having
Tuesdays.
fun.
So if they did on the 14th.
They
So
meet
they would have to-
Tuesdays.
Tuesday, okay.
Right.
Meet Tuesdays.
And if they're already scheduled to meet the 14th.
Think so? I can check.
Oh, I just shut my
Tuesday.
computer down. Oh, I can do it on my phone.
Where is it? Where do they post?
So that's a
They're
statutory,
on
Mary.
the Berlin, town of Berlin
My
site.
town.
This is your this
It has
is
to be on my
blah,
town
blah,
because
blah.
it's regionalized. It has to go under
I
my
don't-
town.
Yeah, it's on
Yeah,
the town
'cause,
of Berlin.
Yeah.
I
Massachusetts
just found out
Department
last
of-
night they were pushing it to the 21st. I didn't even realize that was 4 days after the
Well,
deadline.
And they asked. Last night it was a, hey, can we do this question?
Would you
Again,
pass that down to
speaking
Kristen?
the not.
Oh, sure. They were trying to do it to be accommodating, not to be delaying.
Yeah, sure.
So,
No, I don't think.
First
any of that-
paragraph
it-
on the
yeah.
top, Kristen. First paragraph on the top.
yeah. Yeah. No, I know. I was just looking at this as
You gave it to us. It's from.
Yep. No, I was just wondering if it referenced a Mass General Law or
No.
if it was.
I don't see
I think the whole
This
memo.
is a DESI. This is a DESI document.
There's not one on the agenda right now, or on
Okay.
the town, there's not one on the town site.
You have that because you gave it to us.
I do. Yes. No. That's not the point. It didn't register that the deadline was 4 days past when they said they were pushing the vote out 2 weeks.
Mhm.
You know.
Of course.
Sorry, a lot of other things on the brain last night.
So how do we want to proceed here? Do we want to actually take a vote tonight? Like I said, we do have the open, and we could just take the time to think about it and have a meeting. And we don't have one scheduled. Have one next Wednesday, and hopefully have a short one to finish that off.
I think it would be helpful to have the final school budget before we
Okay.
vote.
All right, so do we want to schedule a meeting? Everybody good for a meeting next Wednesday, 7:30?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then if we do
I need
have,
one piece of, sorry.
Are you good for a Wednesday meeting next
Finance
Wednesday,
committee's already
7:30?
scheduled on the 15th.
Yeah,
Oh, we
we
still
already
have it up there?
Yeah,
Yep.
we didn't.
Nothing you have
we
to do,
didn't-
Julie.
oh, wait a minute, was it maybe, was it the,
Originally, we had nothing on this day, the 8th, and we had moved the 15th to the 8th, but that's fine if it's still up there.
Nope, there's 3 scheduled, 15, 22,
Then we're
29.
good.
There's nothing scheduled the 5th, the 12th, the
Hopefully you
19th,
We
the
just
go
did in
on.
26th.
case we had issues
On
to
recess.
talk about.
You were
Yeah.
probably smart and said, why do I cancel this? It'll be easier to cancel it if it actually happens, or
Yeah.
needs to be canceled.
I think I was worried more about making sure it showed up when we made the change, because it's always easy to cancel.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
one,
All right, so do we have any other business we need to finish for tonight?
The only other thing would be, the one question I had on the warrant. So this page here.
Pass that
Because
thing
I'm
back
trying
down.
to keep free cash.
Is this Mary's?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Because I'm trying to keep free cash available for other things. We actually do have a surplus in Chapter 32B, employee benefits, and the audit, a projected.
Which one are you looking at? I'm sorry. Okay.
A projected surplus in FY23. So I'm looking at doing some line item transfers to fund some of our overages in FY23. So basically inter-budget line item transfers rather than trying to fund out of free cash or going to the reserve fund. This would help us when we look at our free cash numbers and what we have left on the table. I just want to make sure this is okay with you the way that I'm setting it up. So what I'm proposing is that we do take $50,000 from free cash to replenish the reserve fund. The ambulance receipts of $114 is for the ambulance, coming from ambulance receipts. The rest of these items on here would be funded out of the surplus that we show in the top chart of Chapter 32B and the audit. So I have sufficient funding, but I understand the process here has traditionally been, if we have an overage, to go for a reserve fund transfer. I don't know if you want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 reserve fund transfers when I have the funding in the budget to fund them. I'm used to doing just a line item transfer.
We can just do, we do have a form that we fill out to do a line item to line item transfer.
Okay, yep.
We could do that versus it even going here.
Are you talking about like an end of year transfer?
Yeah, the last 2 months.
But I don't know that,
can
then we'd have
make
to
it.
run deficits in these accounts, so which
Gotcha.
you can't do. So we either have to fund these, we either have to replenish the reserve fund with enough money to cover this approximate $60,000 in line item overages, or I can take the money out of the excess that I have in 32B and the audit. So that's my question to you all as I'm drafting this warrant, as to how you would like me to proceed.
So this is an article that'll be done at town meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
This is adjusting the FY23 operating budget. So basically, all the items, except for the first 2 in the table at the bottom, we need to add money to those line items.
Actually, it doesn't matter because it's all in May and June that we can do the transfers. So they'll already be in done. If we don't do a reserve.
I'm so not used to doing it. I don't usually do it.
I don't care how you do it, whatever way
Yeah,
you want to do
whatever
it.
is simple,
it
makes it
doesn't-
simple.
yeah.
Whatever way you think is simplest. I mean, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul anyway, so it doesn't really
It
matter.
really
It's-
is.
It's just a matter of.
We
yeah.
have the money, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's my personal opinion, not, I mean, you all can have yours too.
I mean, we can transfer the money from Chapter 32B and the audit and put it into reserve fund too, and then do end of the year.
I have no
Do reserve fund
preference
transfers.
either way.
Do with what, I'm sorry.
Reserve fund transfers. Yeah.
Could. Because like Kristen said, if any of these are gonna be a negative before the town meeting, then we would have to take care of it before we even get to town meeting, so it would have to come from the reserve fund, because that's the only place we can take it from.
Right, and right now we have a balance of like
28.
28.5 or something like that.
Yeah. So per se, it's not really
Right.
gonna make a difference.
Current balance 28.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not gonna make,
Yeah, we're gonna have to do
yeah.
transfer of some sort anyway.
Can't we
What-
just do a reserve fund transfer to cover it all?
We don't have enough in the reserve fund right now.
Yeah,
We
we
only
don't
have
get
28,400.
There's
I
nearly
believe.
60,000, yeah.
So it would only be the ones
Oh.
that
Right.
are gonna be in the negative.
So can and we can't take money anywhere else to put it into the reserve fund?
Not until May 1st.
Not until May, yeah. Okay, well, whatever way that you people want it,
We'll
I'm fine
talk,
with.
maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
if it come May, well, I mean, we had 28,400 to cover anything that was partial, right? That we do, do we see anything that would be running a significant deficit before May 1st on any of these?
Is unemployment gonna?
I mean, and that one, I mean, still, we got, I mean, at 15,000, we still got plenty to cover
Unemployment
it.
maybe, and the salaries maybe,
Mhm.
but those would be, I mean, like, expenses for like data systems, we can just hold off until May.
And we
Do
could,
something like that, so we could just add that into, you know, line item to line
So
item.
15 and 8 is still under
23.
28.
As long-
We're
and we
gonna be-
do
Yeah,
have,
we can talk about.
Yeah,
I
I'm,
think we can pull
I'm
it
just
off.
not used to doing end-of-year transfers, so we can talk about that.
Okay.
June's
got it
I
covered.
didn't like them. I thought the state doesn't like them.
Who, the state?
Yeah.
State doesn't care.
Oh,
They
all
don't
right.
even know about it.
All right. I'm used to just, so
Unless they walk
I
us.
had a FinCom that if there was any adjustment to the operating budget, they wanted to go before town meeting. So that when I say I'm not used to end of year transfers, it's not that I don't know what it is, that's what I mean.
We don't
Yeah.
like to see it go to town.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah,
see,
so we're
everyone's
reversed,
philosophically
yeah.
different. So why don't June and I talk a little bit more about it, and we'll
Okay.
come back to you next Wednesday with a plan.
okay.
I think
The
it tends to
cap-
confuse town meeting people.
I don't wanna
Maybe it's just
confuse
they're not used to it.
people.
No,
The,
sorry.
the caveat with these end of year, end of fiscal year transfers is that if you need a FinCom vote, you have to make sure you can get at least three of
Everybody's
us.
around, yeah.
Because end of year is already June, July, so.
End of year,
Yep.
May 1st.
Starts May 1st, okay.
Yep.
Oh, it does? I
Yep.
thought, then why were we rushing on?
Because you only have until July 15th to do the final reserve fund transfer.
Oh, okay, so if you get us at town meeting, you're good.
We'll see if we can get you to con you into meeting at least once every month.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you can decide whatever you're gonna do, but you have to wait till.
You might need cookies for that, June.
You let me
Yes.
know what you need. You just let me know. We
Okay,
take
I'm
orders.
ready.
All right.
I'm ready. Is
Anything
everybody
else?
else ready? Because I'm
We're
ready.
covered.
You gotta pull
We're
the
ready.
plug, Jan?
I'm ready. Motion to adjourn.
All right, second.
10:07, thank you.